Good evening. I am Dr. Patricia Lewis Baisden, and on behalf of the African American Alliance, the Vallejo branch of the NAACP, and the Community Democratic Club, we welcome everyone here in person, as well as those online, to Vallejo City Council Candidates Form 22. If there are any candidates in the building who have not checked in with Siraj Knight, please do so at this time. He is waiting for you at the rear. We are requesting that everyone turn off their cell phones or place them on vibrate. Also, to adhere to the building's COVID protocol, we ask that you wear your mask and keep appropriate distance from one another unless sitting in family or household groups. For your information, those of you that are visiting for the first time, the bathrooms are through the rear doors down the left hallway. At this time, we would like to recognize Dr. Reverend Justin Lester, who is the pastor of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. Please stand and wave to us, Dr. Lester. Thank you. Are there any other dignitaries in the building on this evening, in the person of elected officials or pastors? Would you please stand at this time? Thank you. Without further delay, I present to some and introduce to others the MC for the evening in the person of Mr. J. King. Mr. King is a proud father of 2 sons and a daughter, and is well known in many different areas, including the field of music as an accomplished record producer and performer who in his youth formed the very successful group Club Nouveau. He is now a popular radio host, CEO at the J. King Network, and president and CEO of the California Black Chamber of Commerce, and has a personal vision to improve business opportunities for African Americans throughout California and promote economic development while building coalitions with other organizations throughout the state. I am proud to share that he is one of our very own, spending a significant part of his youth in Vallejo, and now resides between Los Angeles and Sacramento, California. Mr. J. King.
I actually used to live right across the street. Roman and, God, I can't remember his brother. They used to live right there, right here on Florida Street. Roman and Lance. And went to Springstown Junior High School, Hogan High, graduated from Vallejo. So I'm always happy to be back in Vallejo. It's home. I have a bunch of cousins and family here. Happy to be here representing the California Black Chamber of Commerce. Happy to see that we are engaged. And it's important that if we're going to make any changes in our community, that we have to engage in all aspects of what America is. America doesn't get to be the great country it is without you and I. But I don't think we recognize or understand it. When you look at America, you should look at it with pride and strength, because you are America. When you look at America, America is cotton, America is sugar, America is tobacco, and America is the slave trade. And that's all me and you. It doesn't get to be a great country without us, and I hope we start to recognize the power that we possess and the strengths that we are in this country. I'm going to start with the second moderator first because I'm going to read both moderators to you right now. Calvin Harrell Jr. Calvin is a local voice of reason, and he is the vice chair of the City of Vallejo Economic Vitality Commission. He's the current president of the CDC Community Democratic Club and a member of the Vallejo branch of the NAACP. Calvin is a 30-year resident of Vallejo and the entrepreneurial owner of My Legacy Matters, a service company specializing in a photographic and printing service located here in Vallejo. He will be your moderator in the second half of this program. The reason why I read him first is because it's the only time I will read who the moderators are. And so I'll start right now with your moderator that will start the evening, Ms. Peggy A. Cohen Thompson. Her professional status is that of a principal broker and owner at Prestige Realty, a business notary and business and notary services specializing in commercial sales, business opportunities, and leasing facilitation, an owner and stylist at Vogue Styles and Boutique. Her current community engagement is that of trustee of the Solano County Office of Education No. 7, the chair of Vallejo Planning Commission, a board member of the Vallejo Naval and Historical Museum, and a member of the African American Alliance. She's also a former board member of the California Black Chamber, so I know how powerful and how strong she is. And what I would like for you all to do is to show some enthusiasm, give a rounding applause to our folks that are going to be here today. If that is rousing, I would hate to see what chintzy sounds like with you all. So can I get a rousing applause, please? Ms. Peggy Cohen.
Candidates, step on up. As the candidates are assembled, I'd like to share with you the concept that we have for this forum. Typically, forums are a question and answer. They do not elicit the type of answers we believe are needed to have an understanding of the individual. Oftentimes, the conversation or the questions that are proposed are answered by party number one, candidate number one, and candidate number four has the opportunity to hear the answer of the previous three candidates. The result is that an individual in the number four position can distill the information down to what is most attractive to the audience by observing the facial responses and otherwise. And so we've changed the format for this evening to a discussion format. We will present a series of questions. Those questions will be a part of the discussion, and we expect the candidates to chime in, respond, give feedback, debate, to make observations or proposals. The purpose being, we need to see how you will behave or perform in the back room of city chambers. We need to see how you will perform when you're sitting on the dais. Do you have a collaborative spirit? Are you clear and articulate in your thinking? Are you clear in what the issues are? So that is the way that we're going to run this forum this evening, and we hope that you appreciate our assessment of previous forums and why we've adapted this particular design. I'd like the candidates to go about introducing themselves, and let me start here on the left, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Diostato J.R. Matulak.
Good evening to everybody. My name is Cassandra James.
May I stop you for a moment? Yes. You have up to 2 minutes to share what you are, who you are. Thank you for introducing yourself.
Okay. So
go ahead,
we'll start with our 2-minute introduction?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. For those of you that may not know me, I am Diostato J.R. Matulak, and I am looking to be your Vallejo City Council member for District 2. While out campaigning, District 2 residents are sharing that they want their representative to be more than just a passionate person, but also who has a proven track record of making change at the city level. Not only do I live in District 2, but I work for the Vallejo City District Unified School District at one of the elementary schools in District 2, where I am an academic support provider, using my degree in social work to provide resources such as food and clothing, while directing students and families to such services as medical and dental programs, social and emotional support, in addition to counseling services through Solano County and organizations such as A Better Way. I help teach kids life lessons, preparing them to learn from what mistakes they may make at the elementary school level so they don't make those same mistakes when they are teens or in their 20s, where there are more serious consequences. What makes me stand out is my vision to change Vallejo with my near decade of institutional knowledge. I want to start this by improving the Vallejo narrative by touting all the good that is actually happening here in Vallejo. Let's start with economic development. My architectural degree allowed me to be appointed to the Vallejo Planning Commission for the past 7 years. Our Planning Commission was part of the approval process with the Vallejo City Council to approve V-Town Farms, which committed $600,000 of funding directly to District 2, which is being divvied up between groups and organizations such as food banks and other programs and services. With this improved Vallejo narrative, we will be able to hire and retain good, qualified public safety officials, along with city staff, to improve our economic development, public safety, infrastructure, while bringing much-needed resources to District 2. It's changing the Vallejo narrative with my near decade of institutional knowledge that has me leading Vallejo's future now.
Thank you. We have a green, a yellow, and a red light. It is on and working now? Yes. Very good. Those will be our timers. Would you introduce our timers, please, Ms. Peggy?
Oh, our timers are...
Wait a minute.
All right. Mr. Albacaso and Mr. Hicks, a former city council person. In fact, he was the second.
I didn't know that.
Attorney Brown was the first, and he was the second. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, candidates, please keep an eye on the lights, because the timer will, as it hits yellow, you've got 1 minute. As it goes to red, your time is up. Ms. Cassandra James, you are the next candidate, please.
Yes. My name is Cassandra James, and I am running for Vallejo City Council in District 2. I am a mother, I'm a spouse, and I'm a granddaughter. It's been nearly 20 years since I started in nonprofit organizing, from working with young women who've been impacted by the criminal justice system to my current position of overseeing program budgets. As a mother who have worked in historically excluded communities throughout the Bay Area and currently organizing with some Vallejo organizations, in addition to my own lived experience within these current systems, it gives me a unique perspective and understanding of when to step up and when to pull others with me. Currently, I am a civil service employee working for the City and County of San Francisco as a community development specialist for the Office of Housing and Community Development. And I currently sit on the commission here in Vallejo, the Housing and Community Development Commission. I am a charter member of the Sankofa Democratic Club, a club dedicated to Black women in Solano County, to be at the table. And I was also the former Solano County Redistricting Advisory member. So every 10 years when we go through redistricting, being able to sit at the table and making sure that voices are heard. I recently earned my bachelor's degree from Mills College in politics, economics, policy, and law. And I'm happy to be in the room with everyone here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Jordan.
Good evening. My name is Don Jordan. I'm a 32-year resident of Vallejo. And from the time I got here, I fell in love with the city. Over these last couple of years, I've been disappointed with the city. City of Vallejo has gotten to the point now that long-term residents don't want to live here anymore. I decided I was going to die in the city. And when I made that decision, that's when I decided to run for office. We have to stop getting less when we give more. We have to stop dealing with disturbances, with garbage, with torn up streets. That has to end. And we need somebody that's been in the city, president of the Democratic Club, head of the Human Relations Commission, on the Civil Service Commission, out in the streets, working in the community and knowing the movers and shakers in the community. If you want to change Vallejo, we have to put people in office that are going to sit in front of the city manager and say, I'm sick and tired of what we're getting. The city manager's plan has nothing about the main issues that's facing this city. And everybody I talk to, as I door knock, is garbage, it's the unhoused, it's the potholes in the streets, and that's second and third on his list. We need to put our priorities first in city council and not last. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final candidate, Garrett Tolles.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. My name is Garrett Tolles, and I'm running for City Council for North Vallejo. Vallejo's residents' quality of life is being jeopardized daily due to uncontrollable factors such as crime, poor infrastructure, sideshows, the lack of housing opportunities, the lack of job opportunities, lack of resources, a citywide drought on extracurricular activities and programs for the youth, and there's still a trust gap between the community and public agencies that govern here in Vallejo. I made efforts to bring the spotlight to Vallejo in regards to poor infrastructure with a group of volunteers that fix potholes. And I say we're pretty successful. We managed to get the city and state's attention, and they came out and helped us fix potholes as well. I've been an active person in our community, extremely active. I'm not an out-of-the-woodworks politician, and I believe that everybody in council from this day on needs to be as active. I live by these two sayings: actions speak louder than words, and you perform the way you practice. So with that being said, I'm a community advocate, and I want to help uplift our community any way possible. I'm extremely assertive politically when fighting for what's right, and most importantly, I'm a man of the people, and I believe that we need leaders for the people. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to give a series of questions, not to be answered individually, but they will guide you in the discussion that we're going to have. One of the hottest topics in this city right now, while we know all of the perils or the challenges that some areas and some community members have, it's something that's going to be on the ballot upcoming, and that is the measure Measure P. That is a increase in sales tax. The sales tax revenue projection from Measure P is $18 million a year. What way, excuse me, that's a timer. What way can the city, these are the questions. What way can the city increase revenue to support healthy city functions? How can we achieve it? Are you in favor of the sales tax increase initiative on the upcoming ballot? Do we have enough revenue to pay for projects and things the community needs, such as fixing potholes? If there is excess in expenses as it currently stands, as many suggest, how can the budget be adjusted to and still allow the projects that we want to get done, to proceed? So let's start the discussion right off the top. Are you in favor or are you against? Why are you in favor and why are you against? And I'll start with you, sir. And then the rest of you jump into the conversation. We will pepper you during the course of your comments.
In regards to Measure P, yes, I am in favor of Measure P because history proves that we can't rely on the state and the federal government to provide the funding that we need to help fix our city. With Measure P, that's going to allow us to increase, like it was mentioned, $18 million, and within that, we're able to figure out how can we best utilize that between our general fund, using it within our enterprise funds, and being able to balance that with the with the unfunded liabilities and two-tier pensions that are impacting how we finally end up with a balanced budget at the end of the year. So with this extra money, this is going to allow us to do the things that we need to do here in the city of Vallejo.
Is that a convincing argument?
The problem with Measure P is how is it that Benicia can do a similar measure specifically designated to roads, and that's the #1 complaint in Vallejo, but Vallejo can't do that. Vallejo, and I told them at City Council, if you want Measure P to pass, it needs to be dedicated for the police oversight board and for streets. You would get 65%, but they don't do that. They said it's going to the general fund and you're going to have oversight. 90% of the people in this room right now do not trust city government.
Cassandra.
I think that's why we're running for office, because we are trying to change that. I do support Measure P because I want to level the playing field for my kids. I currently live in the Crest, and our roads over there was not fixed by the pothole vigilantes, unfortunately. So with Measure P bringing in $18 million, we could focus that on housing and homelessness, our infrastructure, and I don't mind paying the 20 cents on the $20 now versus paying hundreds of dollars later.
But can't we cut the cost of operating the city and save $18 million a year somewhere?
We can't cut the cost because we don't have an industry that brings in money. So Measure P will be that platform, or will be the bottom line or the floor for us. And that way we could be creative in looking at other revenues to create industries and other sets to create money to come into the city.
Mr. Garrett?
I wanted to start off by saying I'm so sorry, Ms. James. I do have a $5K budget to put aside so we can get to the Crest. But at this point, I like to say I'm leaning towards no, but I understand both sides. I think it's a regressive tax sale increase for, the more unfortunate community members. It might, it impacts District 2, it impacts District 6 more than it will impact District 1 or District 4 that's more financially equipped for a measure of this sort. And I also believe that we could benefit from $18 million a year as long as we know where it's actually going. Accountability is what I'm more concerned with.
And the key issue, the other key issue with Vallejo is Vallejo only looks at certain pots. I mean, Vallejo, if we decided, hey, let's do some advertising in Vallejo. Let's do, sell something or use other resources that we can add income to Vallejo. But we always either go to the state, or we always go to the federal government, and right now, the federal government and the state have a surplus. But how many of those dollars are we really going after? And that's my whole thing, is we pigeonhole ourselves and we don't expand and try to think of things outside the box to bring more revenues in the city, because we do not have the infrastructure. And Mare Island is a sad, sad story. That island should be bringing in billions of dollars. And this right now is bringing in pennies.
Interesting. Any other comments that you might have on that? So, you suggested at the outset that you were for Measure P, and now you're suggesting that we look at state funding.
No, I was not. Initially, I thought of going for Measure P, but then when I saw that Benicia put a measure specifically for roads, the citizens of Vallejo are saying, we want this done, and Measure P goes to the general fund. It is not designated specifically for those repairs. Once it goes in the general fund, now we're dependent on the city council, and we're dependent on this so-called committee to make sure that money goes where it's supposed to go.
But aren't we as citizens electing council representatives to monitor and make sure that what is planned or proposed is followed through on? And if not, hold the parties within city staff responsible for not following through with the proposed
and
usage.
That's a beautiful thought. Why are we doing it right now? Why isn't it happening right now? Because the city manager runs the city of Vallejo, not the city council. And that's where a lot of people get confused. They think the mayor and the city council run the city. We're policy. We are not the day-to-day operations of the city. The only thing we can do is fire the city manager, and that's it.
But this is where we would have a voice as city council members of what happens with that. This is where the oversight and asking those tough questions comes into play. And I've been doing that as a planning commissioner for the past 7 years, challenging staff, challenging Mike Malone when he was Public Works, challenging Ms. Gillian Hayes when she was our leader of the Planning Commission, and challenging Veronica Nebb. So we've been having these conversations, and I've built those relationships with with these individuals and their departments to make sure we're able to move Vallejo forward.
And the thing is,
One of the questions were about understanding the role of a city council member. So with what you were going to say, if you could kind of address that as well, what do you determine is or your understanding, not you determine because it's set by code, the role of the city council member?
I was just going to say that this will be the first time that our city council will be truly equitable, where we will have someone in each of the districts that will be representing the entire city and not just from a cluster of a city. So we may be tired now of what's happening with the city because they don't have our lived experience, but we have the opportunity to make sure that we send people to city council that live in our neighborhoods and our communities. And the role of the city council person is one to hold city staff, city manager accountable to what's happening, but also bring the policies forward in front of city council in the city that best suits their community, and also relay the information to the community as well, because this isn't just a silo. You're bringing the information back because we have people in our communities that can't get to city council, that don't understand what's happening in city council. So we're mainly there to translate, not mainly there, but one of the things is to translate experience into policy, but also holding those who are implementing the policies accountable in how it impacts our communities.
And I'd like to add to that, basically the role of city council members is to provide direction for staff, to provide direction for the city manager.
Yeah, but that's not true. That's not true.
It is true.
What is true is council is policy. And I mean, if you don't believe it, look at what we got right now. Look at the city council right now. They're not wimps. They're not idiots. And Hakeem used to have community meetings, and there'd be 4 people in the room. You can think of things as being wonderful and utopian, but when the tire hits the road, only a very few people in Vallejo, and I'm looking at the people in this room, you'll see the same people over and over and over and over that come out and participate in city government. But the general population does not. And for me, we need to have a stronger mayor, because when I elect the mayor and city council, I want the mayor to be able to fire the head of public works. I want the mayor to be able to fire the police chief. I want the mayor to be able to get rid of other people, department heads. Because if they're not doing what we want, if the streets aren't clean, if the homeless are taking over, and there's potholes in the street, then they need to go.
There is direction provided, though.
I've got to jump on that question, because what you're asking for is a mayor that has the ability to do the duties of a CEO. And at the compensation level that's written into the charter, I'm curious as to what CEO you're going to get as a mayor. Let me follow that question up. Where do you stand in the idea that council, in a position that's more full-time than it is already, or shall we say we should respect it as full-time if we expect a performance full-time, where do we stand with the strong mayor position?
You're looking at him. Cassandra got experience, he got experience, he got experience, I got experience. The main problem with Vallejo is you're gonna pay somebody $14,000 a year to do a full-time job. If this council was getting paid a full-time wage, you have people that leave this city every day and go to Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose. You have experts that live in this city, but they're not gonna get on city council for no $12,000 a year. They're not gonna quit their careers for that, but they'll quit their careers and give back to the community for $95,000, $85,000, because now it makes sense. But this city has so much resources in it, and they're sitting at this table right now. But these are the dedicated ones. These are the people that's willing to go out there and put their voice and their actions up front. But a lot of people can't do that because they can't afford it.
And just to bring this conversation back to District 2, half of our district earns $75,000 or less. Right. So a lot of our district in District 2 may be time poor, may not have the ability to come to city council meetings. That's why it's important for the representative, the city council person, to be in the community, knocking on doors, making sure that this information is there, to have people understand and know what is going on with the city. I understand that the city doesn't pay as much, and that's an unfortunate fact. However, we're up here because I'm up here because I love this city. I'm up here because I birthed the next generation in this city, because my sons live in a community that has been historically excluded. So regardless of what the pay of the pay of a city representative or a city council person, we are up there to make sure that District 2 residents they have their voices heard, they know what's going on in the city, and they know how these policies will impact them directly.
And I think over our lifetime, I think we've all done a lot of volunteering work in our lifetime. I've done over 2 decades of volunteer work here in the city and with the Vallejo City Unified School District. And so if we have to give a little bit more time, I have a mortgage-paying job I have to do. So I do that, but then I come in, stay late at night, and work on this other stuff that I do for the union, and I do on a volunteer basis. So that would be the same model I'd be following as a city council person, is putting in that that effort and that due diligence to make sure that I'm bringing out the passion that I have and love for this city to do what's right for the city, and that's where I would be going with it.
And you're standing on the strong mayor possibility?
In regards to?
Are you for or against a strong mayor form of government as opposed to the current model we have where it's a city manager managed city?
I think it's a matter of getting the right voices and the right input and working collaboratively as a city. In my perspective, there's too much divisiveness that's going on in there, and I'm about bringing all voices together, whether they agree with me or I disagree with them. It's a matter of looking from their perspective and understanding where they're coming from, and to work cohesively and come to a like-minded solution that's going to move Vallejo forward.
Thank you. Gary, you got another comment?
At this point, I believe it's about who we have to actually put in office. I believe right now we do have a strong mayor, but we also have a strong city manager. But ultimately, it just depends on who's running. And money shouldn't be the reason why you run or not. It should be because you have love for the city. Although I do feel that the city council underpaid, I mean, it is what it is. We have to do what we have to do to keep the city going, to keep the city running. But ultimately, as of now, I'm not in favor of strong mayor or in favor of a manager council charter at the moment. So.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Let's move to the next topic. That is the Vallejo Police Department. There's a series of questions again I would pose, and let's have that discussion and that dialogue. I hope you can appreciate what we're trying to get out of you in this discussion. What can the council do to ensure our police receive proper training and are adequately compensated for their jobs? It appears we're in the process of studying, second question, it appears we're in the process of studying and implementing the oversight policing model. How will this benefit the residents, and how can we support this in the budget? There are actually challenges to such a thing on the basis of it's going to cost us money. What new creative initiatives would you propose to improve the reputation and interaction between the officers and residents, specifically addressing issues for the African American residents of the city? Cassandra James, let's start with you to kick it off.
Ooh, our police department. Our police department, there was a lot of questions in that, but yes, and I may have need you to repeat it, but I think I have the police oversight one for sure. But I go back to the neighborhood that I live in, and I go back to the experience of raising 2 black boys in a city with one of the deadliest police forces in California. And we have to acknowledge and be honest about what we currently have in our city in regards to our police department. One of the things is for the oversight, there should be oversight of our police department because we need to bridge the police to the community. Yes, we want the police in the communities because I live in part of District 2 where they shoot often. I live in the part of District 2 where we recently had a murder and we didn't see Vallejo Police Department show up. So I want the police there, but I need the police to come into the community and be able to know the community and be able to not be scared of the community. And to be able to have conversations in the community, to have conversations with the police officer. And if that's with the police oversight model where people can actually have a say in the process of what's happening within our police department to hold our police department accountable and through an equitable lens to make sure that the police department reflects the community that it serves, then that's something that I'm well in favor of the police oversight model.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm in favor of the police oversight model as long as it stays independent. And what I mean by that is no prior law enforcement. I don't want any favoritism, any cronyism. It needs to be independent oversight. It needs to be an independent auditor, an independent inspector general. At this point, I'm totally in favor of it. I think with the policing, the history of the policing of Vallejo, it's needed, and I want to see it move forward. I'd also like to be a liaison if elected, so I'm 1,000% for a police oversight committee.
This goes back to me, to my vision of changing the Vallejo narrative. I think once we start getting more of a positive narrative for Vallejo, it's going to allow us to hire, train, and retain the good quality and the right kind of people that we want in our police force, in our firefighters, to help us move the city working together. Very much the training for the police needs to change to where they're more collaborative, engaged with the community, so the community can build that trust with the police officers. Until that happens, you're always going to have this trust factor, and this is where we need to get that collaborative and working together as a community.
The only problem is, it's the culture. We have a police department that has a culture problem. That's what the problem is. And the issue of collaboration and all that, it's good, beautiful words to say, but that's why Chief Williams got hired. He got hired to break up that culture. And until that happens, until the Vallejo Police Officers Association, we come to Jesus moment with them and tell them this gotta stop. We got to put the police oversight board in place and have just like Garrett said, we have to have subpoena power, because our internal investigation part of the police department is not but people patting folks on the back saying, "Good thing you didn't get shot today. Go on home." So it's a culture thing. Those words are beautiful, but we have to change the culture of our police department, and that's going to need the chief that we got doing what he's doing and breaking up what we got right now.
And I'm going to say it, I think they're overpaid, so just putting it out there.
You've been paying attention, obviously. You would be as a candidate for city council, and I apologize to those that are watching online. We understand that the mic has not been picking up our voices, and so we're going to be turning the mic so that you can hear us. You each have been paying attention. You've been attending council meetings and that sort of thing. What do you perceive as holding up the implementation of a policy? Let's just be practical. In the absence, any corporation operates in this manner. In the absence of the resources within the organization or the development of a program within the organization, you hire outside, or you look for outside resources to present a proposal of operating procedures. It's my understanding that something has been put together on the basis of Common Ground, I believe is the name of it. So what is the holdup of making it happen? I have my ideas, but I need you guys to share with us your ideas. Mr. Jordan.
When I went to the city council meeting, the Monterosa sisters got up there, and they said that I was on Human Relations Commission over 20 years ago. We were trying to get an oversight 20 years ago. They laughed in our face. They said, ain't no way in the world you're going to get that. She said something that just struck a chord with me. She said, if you guys had had a police oversight board, my brother would still be alive. That got to me. And what's holding us up is the culture that was going on down at City Hall, When Nicolini was in office and we had other police chiefs in office, they weren't going to listen to it. And now with the killing of George Floyd, that's why all this change is going on. It's not going on because the citizens of Vallejo asked for it. It's going on because the nation is asking for it.
Thank you for that. Ms. James?
We've always been asking for police oversight and police reform in this country, not just because of George Floyd. It's been more than George Floyd, and we are still asking. Previous experience, I sat on or recreated an African American Community Police and Relations Board. We didn't go to the city to ask for a police oversight commission or a police oversight committee. The community created it itself because we were working with nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations, and the district captains of the local police department to create a culture competency training for incoming officers, to create criminal versus culture training for officers that were walking in the community. So it's a lot of asking that's happening versus the education of Common Ground, and I agree with the Common Ground Oversight Committee and their policies that they have for the police department. It's more than just going in front of city council and doing it. The work happens in the community.
Ms. James, you
Yes.
mentioned something about district captains. What was that?
So Chief Shawnee Williams just appointed, I don't know their official titles, if they're lieutenant, sergeants, or captains.
They're lieutenants.
Okay, thank you. They're still police too.
Yeah.
So he just appointed 4 officers that will represent areas of Vallejo.
Yeah, they're area commanders.
Yeah, oh, yes. So he just appointed officers to areas of Vallejo. So District 2 is encompassed in one of those areas, and there has not been conversation with that specific commander. Well, there has been conversation, but there hasn't been conversations with that specific commander to implement what Common Ground, the policies that Common Ground has developed to implement the police reform that we're asking about.
And by the way, that commander is Darden. So.
Yes.
And Commander Darden met with the African American Alliance back in June. And the funny part, when I talked to him was he works Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And he has the rest of the week off. And I was like, how can you be a commander if you only work 3 days a week?
And he works at night, so it's really hard to get a hold of him.
Has, to your knowledge, you're speaking from personal experience within your own district, have you had any direct contact with that district commander or area commander?
Right.
Have you had any direct contact with that commander, or have they reached out into the community to have a conversation with the community and say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we'd like to do, we'd like to help you set up neighborhood watch? Have you had any of those types of discussions or dialogue with anybody in the
I have not,
order?
but that's something that needs to happen, though,
Definitely.
because that's where the collaboration with the community, to where they get the idea where we're coming from District 2, to understand what are the needs that we have from the police and how they can better protect us and collaborate with us to build that trust. And that's where it starts, is there needs to be an interaction between the residents and the police department in a better way than what's been happening in the past.
Mr. Matulak, I'm gonna segue from that question for just
Sure.
a moment. You talked about changing the narrative
Yes.
as we started this conversation. And, that's a tall order. It requires so much.
Yes.
What in your mind is the vision of changing the narrative? How do we get there to change the narrative?
As you pointed out, this is not an overnight thing. This is not going to happen in one night. So you got to pick at it. You have to take it little piece by piece. And you started out by actually talking about all the good that is actually happening here in Vallejo. So when I was on the Planning Commission, we had Nimitz Group come in front of us, and they were giving their report, their annual report of what they've been doing. They were just talking about blasé things that the community didn't really care about. And so I have to ask those poignant questions to bring out, they're doing remediation. They're doing all of the building infrastructure changes. They're restructuring a lot of the buildings over there. And it's this type of stuff that I pointed out in the Planning Commission meeting, that this is the stuff that the citizens of Vallejo need to hear. And you need to be able to tout that, because from their perspective, nothing is happening, but there is actually a bunch of stuff happening. We just need to get that information out to the citizens.
And how many people have heard it? I've never heard it. I mean, the crazy thing about Vallejo, unless you go to those meetings, you don't get it. You don't hear it. The same thing with the commander. When we had him come to African American Alliance, it was like 3 days a week. And how are you gonna lead or do stuff in the community if you only work 3 days a week? So it's more than just that. It's being part of organizations, being part of systems, so that you can bring that information to the city and then send it out. For my police, I have a chief of police working with me from New Jersey that's helping me form my police platform. I got the National Association of Real Estate Brokers help me deal with my housing platform. So we as council people have to reach out to other resources, because they're not here in the city of Vallejo. And if they do get here, it's a consultant that they're hiring for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, and then we don't even get a report after it's done.
All right, I'm going to chime in on this with the question about the regional housing allocations that are proposed. So can I have someone start off with that? Someone make comments on that? Rena?
I can start with that, because that is some of the stuff that we talked about in the Planning Commission. We look at these evaluations of RENA to evaluate the housing, the balance of housing in there, talking about affordable housing, talking about market rate housing. And this is where we're looking out to the developers from a Planning Commission to help understand how they can come help us, and go to the real estate department organizations and get their input of how they can help lead us with a lot of this information that we need to get out there to get these RENA numbers up and higher for the city of Vallejo.
And can you share with the audience what is RENA specifically?
So that's the regional housing, allocation number. So that's basically figuring out how much housing we have here in the city and how to get more. And the big push is to put a lot of affordable housing out there, but it's a matter of how to get developers here to be able to get that done, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's market rate housing, so that it's a constant ebb and flow with the market, with the housing market as it is.
In the state of California, it is all ebb and no flow.
Yep.
The state of California right now is short over 200 million units of housing.
Very good. From that,
We have people living in their cars because they can't afford the rents. We have people living on the streets because the state of California, not Vallejo, not Solano County, the state of California fell on its ass on what they should do for the citizens of this state.
so what is the solution that you would propose as a council person?
Being a member of the Black Chamber, our esteemed president.
What is the solution that you would propose
For
as a
me,
council person?
As a council person, reaching out to people like the Black Chamber, reaching out to NARAB, reaching out to organizations that I belong to give us solutions, because the key thing with Vallejo is we have to build affordable housing and have a private-public matching. That's how we solve our housing situation. The city can't do it because we depend on federal and state funds, but if we can bring in private money, Kaiser gave Oakland $200 million to build housing. There are corporations out here that will give money and give resources because they know the needs of the city, and if the people can't have housing, they can't do jobs. You can't work if you don't know where you're going to sleep at night.
Okay. There is current work that's already being done in Vallejo in regards to housing. The county has its 2x2 where they meet with all city. There's 2 representatives from each of the cities, also with 2 board of supervisors that's discussing what housing looks like and where the funding can come from. Also, Vallejo, there is a nonprofit organization that meets with other nonprofit organizations collaboratively every 2 weeks to discuss what is happening with the various stages of housing. Housing, we have the unhoused, we have our economically low income residents, and we have those who are trying to buy houses. These conversations are already happening and the work is being done. Also, Vallejo adopted the regional housing plan from All Home, where they have their 1, 2, 4 plan, where we're trying to, one is for permanent housing, and then also preventing eviction prevention as well, where is a partnership with public and private funding from foundations to make sure that we have a safety net for residents so they don't become housed, but also enter cross coalitions as well, so that way we can get folks who are unhoused into some form of housing.
Right. And the great thing about these two people over here.
Let me interject.
Right.
You're in your last 2 minutes, so we can close out this section. So you're starting his 2 minutes, and we'll go around the table for your 2 minutes, all right?
We ending the session? Okay. My name is Don Jordan. The main reason I'm running is because I see that this city wants to be better. The citizens want us to be better. And when I go door to door, they tell me that I'm not leaving Vallejo, but Vallejo's got to get better. And I want to bring the resources of the different organizations that I belong to, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the California Black Chamber, and make a change in Vallejo by bringing in the resources, the knowledge, and the expertise that I've developed over the last 20 years as being a realtor, knowing land use situations, being a tax preparer, understanding how to read a fiscal budgets. And when you think about living in a city or running a city, it's just like living at your home. You got to clean it, you got to repair it, you got to make sure it doesn't fall down, and you got to protect it. Vallejo has not taken care of that. And I think if I get on the city council, and to tell you the truth, if any of us got on the city council, I like what they had to say. I really do. I think every person up here is dedicated in their heart to make a better Vallejo. But if I get the chance to sit on the city council, I will be that bulldog on the council trying to make a change for the better with the resources I have at my availability. Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to thank the Community Democratic Club, the African American Alliance, as well as the NAACP for hosting this forum so we can share our political ideology with the public. I did want to say that I'm a community advocate. I've been in those streets. I've been in the trenches, you know, with those that are suffering, and you know, I've received that secondhand trauma. I mean, a lot of people don't even, you know that my cousin got shot by George Floyd's killer. You know, I was out there with those people, and that advocacy that you know I possess. I want to implement that, you know, for years to come. I think that this city needs to shy away from talking about the potential it has and just actually move forward with it. I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear about potential anymore. I want us to just move forward. We need somebody in office. I think that everybody here is more than qualified and capable of getting the job done, but I want the job done at this point. I want those people that were active on city council. I just want to make sure that we move forward. So, thank you.
Yes, it's been great to be in community with everyone, and I decided to run because my son and I, we were watching the racial reckoning of what happened from George Floyd. We live in a community that has been historically excluded and over-criminalized. And his question was, what can we do? So how do we move from talking to policy? How do we move from protest to policy? How do we make sure that everything that we're talking about up here is implemented? And from my understanding, moms get things done. As the only woman in this race, I am deeply, deeply, not only just passionate, but invested in making sure that this community is everything that we deserve, but mostly is everything that my sons deserve. This is their birthplace. This is where they're being raised. And not only bringing this lived experience, but also my professional experience. I've worked within various communities, worked within policies for the last 17 years. And I've been working with organizations within Vallejo to move us forward and asking the challenging questions in order for us to move forward and for us to be in community with each other. So again, I just want to say thank you, and my name is Cassandra James, and that's why I decided to run for Vallejo City Council.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. And as you can see, everybody up on here, we all have the passion to want to make the change and change Vallejo for the better. But where I stand above where many of my colleagues here is the institutional knowledge that I've garnered over the near decade and the 20 years of volunteering within our city and within our school district to implement a lot of the changes that I'm currently doing as a planning commissioner. Twice selected by my fellow planning commissioners to be the chairperson. And that's been, and the only person, there's only been one other person in the past couple of decades that's ever been selected twice to be chairperson of the Planning Commission. So that speaks to the leadership that my fellow colleagues and leaders in the city of Vallejo have. If you go to my website, when you go to my website, jrmatulak.com, you'll see my endorsement page of all the leaders that I have that are endorsing me. There's 3 current city council members that believe that I am the right person to move the city of Vallejo forward. We've got past electeds and many commissioners and past commissioners that are endorsing me as the next city council member for District 2. So with that speaking towards my leadership skills, this is where my institutional knowledge may stand a little bit above some of my other colleagues up here, and that's where I am the right person to fill the position to be the next city council member for District 2.
Thank you. District 2 candidates, we truly appreciate your engagement, your candor, and what you've been able to share. We hope that the electorate is able to distill the information and select the best candidate for the position going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a 5-minute intermission.
get ready to get started so we can stay on track?
Okay, let's reconvene, please.
At all. At all. We all want that.
Mr. King?
You can't at all. Some of the Virginia street houses are really nice though.
Okay, we're about to start again, so if everybody can kind of get situated. Our second group of candidates are about to start. Let me ask you guys, how many of you guys really enjoyed that first session? I thought it was great. By a round of applause, tell me what you think. A few things that we need to know. If we want America to be great for once, America has to be inclusive of all. If we want America to be great for once, then we have to believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that includes white folks. We cannot be exclusive, or we cannot be excluding of anyone. We have to say today that for us to be a great country, everyone has to be in the conversation. We also have to say if we're going to be a great country, housing should be affordable. Not as something that we have to make these overtures to make happen. It has to be affordable to everybody. I'm going to give you a few numbers that you might not know. 35.2% of Californians are at or below the poverty level. 35.2% of Californians, not black, not Hispanic, not immigrant, all Californians. When you look at what we look like today, the median price of a home in California is $656,000. In order to afford a home mortgage that's $656,000, you have to make around $117,000 a year. So let me tell you how much money you make on average. African Americans, on average, make $56,000 a year in the state of California. Hispanics make an average of $65,000 a year in California. Whites make an average of $98,600 a year in California, and Asians $107,000 a year on average in California. Not one group, on average, makes enough money to be able to afford the average median price of a home. And that's what's criminal. So we have to start thinking about our communities. We have to start thinking about how we become communities within ourselves, how to become coalitions with each other. We got to start having real honest conversations about where we are. In the black community, financial literacy has to be our number one conversation. If we were financially literate, we change 100 years in 10. In the state of California, we have to start erasing all these lines that exist and start building partnerships and coalitions. That's how we're going to win. That's how we're going to change the trajectory of where we are right now. If we don't, we have a country that is dying slowly but surely. And that is just the honest to goodness truth of where we are. So there's a good part and a bad part to this. The good part is that we're holding these forums. The bad part is that we're not engaged. But it's hard to engage people that you've ignored for a long, long time. It's hard to engage folk that you don't make important. It's hard to engage folk that you've taught how to be separate from each other. So today, what I'm hoping is that you that are sitting here today, that you get outside your comfort zone, the space that you're most easiest in, and start getting outside of it, creating new conversations, meeting new people, listening to people not to debate or refute or to go against, but to hear them. And so they can hear you. And to make it not a debate, but a discussion, and sometimes just a listening session so you can go home and just see from their point of view. I want America to be great for once. That's why the debt that's owed to Americans of African descent has to be paid one day, because our government committed crimes against us. And we have to talk about those crimes. And we need white, brown, red, beige. We need everybody to join in that fight with us. And the only way that happens is for us to have these types of conversations. So I'm glad to be here today as the president of the California Black Chamber of Commerce, but I'm really glad to listen to the young people and some of the older folk that I hear today. This is a very powerful discussion, and you guys have some great candidates, and you should be proud of your city. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for having me.
And we thank you, Mr. King. Welcome to the party. I'm going to share with you what we're doing here, because I'm not sure if you were able to hear us in the other room. What we are doing, we've changed the format of the forum, shall we say. As opposed to being a question and an answer, it is now designed to be a discussion. The purpose is, or the rationale that we came up with for this, is that when a question is asked of 4 different candidates, and candidate 1 gets to answer, candidate 4 is at the advantage because they get to hear the answers of candidate 1, 2, and 3. They get to read the room, the expressions and the responses from the audience, and they get to modulate their response to what appeals to the audience that they're presenting to. So rather than do that, we want an open discussion. We want you to weigh in on the topics that we're going to have. We're going to read a series of questions that should guide you into what we want to have you discuss. We will pepper you through to try to make sure that we're staying the course and that we get more, that you're able to elicit more information for us. I hope there are no questions about this format. We're going to get started with the introductions, and I'm going to start here on the right. Would you please introduce yourself? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. My name is Tara Beasley Stansberry, a District 5 resident and your future councilwoman for District 5. I am running for city council because there is a lot of work to do here, and we really don't have any more time to waste. One of the major things that I want to educate you on is that I am running to represent us all. And that is working families, that is seniors, that is veterans, our houseless neighbors, our youth, everyone who encompasses and lives here in Vallejo. A lot of the division has caused us to live separate, and we are no longer in separate but equal times. And I am running for city council here in District 5 because I know that I can bring real value and bring some real ideas and bring my experience to the forefront. With that, you also have to couple compassion. You also have to couple understanding and being able to be a leader. You will take some hits and you will take some falls. And I am willing to take some of those hits to make sure that my community gets the best resources that they deserve. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having me tonight, and I appreciate everybody's attendance too. My name is Melissa Bowman. I am also running for District 5. I guess that would be obvious, but you know. I'm currently on the Planning Commission. One of the things I'm most proud of having been on the Planning Commission is that we did a lot to change the zoning codes last year. So what this does for Vallejo is this makes it easier for affordable housing to be built. A lot of the restrictions that were keeping us from that purpose, from that goal, has now been eased up. We can now look at at vacant space and parking lots, and consider multi-family dwellings. I was also on the Architectural Heritage and Landmarks Commission, and I served as vice chair. One of the things I'm most proud of there is we did a lot to approve the reuse of the historic core, and we worked with Thoreau University, and we worked also with, well, at the time, Lennar, where they were creating the historic core, and so a lot of that progress was brought about by the Architectural Heritage and Landmarks Commission. We approved those projects. I am also the district librarian for Vallejo City Schools. It's something I'm proud of. I'm so happy to be able to serve the city of Vallejo. So I can take all of that experience and bring that to City Council, and I look forward to serving the city in that way.
Thank you. Mr. Monroe.
Thank you for having us, and thank everybody in attendance tonight. My name is Dwight Monroe Jr. I'm running for Vallejo City Council, District 5. I'm an 8-year resident here in Vallejo. I like to think of myself as a public servant. I like to refrain from using the term politician because I truly believe in public service and actually helping and giving back into our communities. I volunteer regularly with various organizations throughout the city, nonprofits and community-based organizations. Name a few: Faith Food Fridays. I've also participated in multiple cleanups throughout the city 2-3 times a month. So I'm somebody that's really hands-on in the community. I would like to advocate to be a person who anybody in the community could come to, feel comfortable reaching out to for any source of information or insight that they may need that's going on within the city. I'm the candidate who's at every city council meeting. I'm talking about on a bi-weekly basis, from special meetings every week to just being involved in learning what's going on. Recently, to prepare for this, for these forums, I've had meetings with the city manager, public works directors, the mayor, and several different council members currently to just kind of feel the knowledge and get more insight on what it is to be a city council member. So in November, I truly look forward to getting all the support we can get for the campaign, and I'd love to have you guys vote in November and also be on the lookout for that mail-in vote. Thank y'all.
Thank you. And Ms. Hill.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tanya Hall, and I, too, am a candidate for District 5 City Council. A little bit about me. I'm a Vallejo native. My family's been here for over 120 years. I born and raised and grew up in District 5. I'm very familiar about our issues, and I've also know about what we've had in the past. And what we've had in the past, of course, is potential of getting back to that. I am a Vallejo City Unified School District worker. I've worked in healthcare here. I'm over 4 decades of volunteering and community involvement here in Vallejo. I've addressed the needs. I actually did a panel, my own personal little panel, where I asked individuals just randomly what their concerns were with our city. And I've gone to address those, and I want to stand here or sit here and say that I would be the best candidate to support those wants and needs of the citizens here in Vallejo. Thank you.
Thank you, and we're going to get started with this conversation. Let's get it started with a topic related to participatory budgeting. What is your understanding of the role of the participatory budget process, the benefits to Vallejo, and how have you participated in it in the past? And what other financial matters have you participated in relative to the city? Let's start with Mr. Monroe.
Okay. Thank you. To my understanding, the participatory budget it is somewhat of a special program where it gives the citizens a chance to participate in what's going on with the city. So you can go ahead and send a request to the participatory budget. I just met her at a different mixer. I've seen her, she just posted recently, it was just open. You can go ahead and submit an idea for where you think the funds should be spent here in Vallejo. It is something that I encourage a lot of people to get involved with because it is like a every one year thing. But it's definitely something that is very vital to the city. People should be involved in it. I have not participated in it personally, honestly, but I definitely look to learn more about it. I think this past year I definitely learned a little bit more, and I believe just getting more involved with the government process of the participatory budget will give us all a better insight on how our dollars are actually being spent and how we can influence it in the city.
Okay, Ms. Bowman, I'm going to ask you to jump in on that conversation, and each of you candidates can jump in with your understanding or how it should be done or what you perceive should be the way that it's done, et cetera. So, Ms. Bowman, go ahead and jump on in.
So sure, yes, I've participated in the participatory budgeting. I've sat in on the initial brainstorming sessions where we put ideas out and watched that process. And I know I put an idea out there, but that was years ago. I can't even remember what it was. But it's a fascinating process. And then later on, after we've narrowed the ideas down, certain ones get on the ballot, and then we vote on them. I voted every time for the participatory budget. I've participated every single time. The thing that's different this year than has been in years past is now they're going to award, after they award, they give the lump sum and say, okay, do what you're going to do, and you submit the receipts and the paperwork.
So is there some more additional accountability? Are you aware that there's more accountability for the program now?
There is. As the co-chair of the Participatory Budgeting Steering Committee, I have worked, let me go back. The PB fund is funds specifically for our community. It is more like putting the projects in the hands of our community. So you get an opportunity to choose which projects are funded. And with that, you also are responsible for being a budget delegate. So we do have budget delegates. There's a whole process, and the first process is idea collection, and we're in that phase now, where a lot of organizations and community members are submitting their ideas. I also was a part of the ad hoc committee, and in that ad hoc committee, we totally changed the script and we made some changes in that rule book because we found it to not be equitable and fair. And what we found was that a lot of our Black nonprofits and a lot of our Hispanic nonprofits and a lot of our Asian nonprofits were not receiving funds, simply because they may have had one or two things that they could not get done. And so we look at that as systemic race issue. So one of the major issues that I just came across as a commissioner was, to your point about accountability, and I'm gonna wrap this up quick. There was an opportunity for a nonprofit to build an art park on the waterfront, and that was 5 years ago. That project never came into fruition, and now a developer has come 5 years later and wants to use that $350,000 towards their design of a park. Well, we can get some high school children to design a park because after all, that park is for them. And so part of my holding our staff, the city staff accountable was that no, we're not gonna use public funds for a developer. If a developer wants to come here, they need to use their own money, not the money specified for our community.
Now, I understand there's been a decline in the PB funds availability over years. It's gone down in the actual monies that have been made available for participatory budgeting. Is that an accurate statement? Because I read it somewhere.
When I came aboard, it was $500,000 a year, and due to COVID, there was an excess of $500,000, so we now have $1 million. When we get back to our meeting next month, I will be making a motion, like I stated before, I will be making a motion to where that $350,000 gets reallocated back into the general budget. So that way we'll have 1.3 million.
The general budget of the participatory
Of the
budget.
participatory budget, yes.
So in
not of
that
our
1.3
city budget.
million, is that going to be spent in a singular year, dispersed
It will.
in a single year, or are you going to take that and spread it out over a few years to increase the value of each year over the 500,000 that you indicated was the baseline?
Well, no, remember, we need money and we need it now. So remember, organizations are bleeding. We are still at we are at the end of a pandemic, but we're still in it. And so the more organizations that can get money, the better. Another thing that I advocated for was to sort of be more in alignment with City Council's goals, because what's happening is we're giving $25,000 to this organization, $10,000 to this organization, and we're not making any real impact and any real progress. And so my idea was for us to collect two subjects, and so more like we choose projects that are only specific for youth development, and then projects that are only specific for seniors or veterans or what have you. So that way we make some real impact and stop, dispersing $1 million out to 100 people. We're dispersing $1 million out to maybe 5.
Piecemeal is the current process.
Yes, it is.
And Ms. Hall,
Yes.
I apologize for the beginning. Ms. Hall, your position and what your thoughts are on that
Okay,
process.
well, I had the pleasure of participating in participatory budgeting as a delegate and also steering committee support for 2 cycles. For 2 cycles. Oh, yeah, that's better. For 2 cycles. And first of all, the funds that are available during that time are funds that are, the funds that are there during that time are the funds that are available. And the participatory budget is a chance for the city, the citizens to speak out, ask, inquire for something to be done, and it's up to that support of the steering committee and the delegates to bring that vision together, to bring that vision possible. And the process itself, it takes proposal writing. I wrote a few proposals and submitting and having them done. Yeah, and
my co-moderator has mentioned that based on our new format with the district elections, and districts have been clearly defined, it actually creates a better opportunity to have specific projects looked at and explored on a district basis. It might be the only specific impact that a council person can have within their district. So we all need to keep that in mind.
yes.
I'm going to jump over and let's move towards the one of the big topics in our city is the upcoming Measure P proposal, and that is an increase in the sales tax rate of less than 1%. And so we want to know: are you for it? Are you against it? What ways can the city increase revenue to support healthy city function? The proposal or the projections are that that particular tax measure will generate $18 million a year. Where can we find $18 million a year? Through cuts to our current budget or departments, et cetera? Where do we find that kind of money that can be generated as new revenue? Are you familiar with that new measure that's been put forth? And question, do you believe we have enough money currently in our budget to provide the services that we desire and frankly many are demanding? Do you think the money is there? Because we want to know where it is if you do believe it is. And if there is an excessive expense, if there is excess in the expenses of the operating right now, how can we adjust it and still meet project needs? So there's a series of questions there, and we just want an open discussion. I'm going to start with you, Ms. Beasley.
Thank you. Originally I was not for Measure P. I will be very honest. I thought, what are we thinking? We can't keep going on increasing taxes. We're in a pandemic, and, people have lost their jobs and the whole story. But the reality is we are behind. And, we have to get up to speed. And in order to do that, we either reallocate funding or we increase our tax base. Unfortunately, and I take that back, I won't say unfortunately, but the reality is that 36% of our citizens here, based on our U.S. Census Bureau from 2020, 36% of our residents here in our entire city of 122,000 are on social services. So there is no possible way that we can recoup and regain more money without increasing our tax base. We can't increase our tax base because we have a large portion of people who are using publicly funded services. So if you like living here and you enjoy Vallejo, it's getting ready to cost you. And the reason why is we've gone, everyone knows that if you want to buy more affordable, you come to Vallejo. It's one of the reasons I came here. It's one of the reasons I opened my business here. So in order to do that, in order for you to, you have to pay a premium, unfortunately, at this time.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned what it costs to shop here. Yes. And I know or what it costs. My concern is a vast number of people that work outside of the city that are working in, I would think, good-paying jobs. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of their shopping in other cities that have higher tax rates already. Sure. And with the increase, inclusive of the county's projected increase, if they pass their measure, we are still going to be in the middle of the pack for sales tax. Right now, we're in the lowest 5 of communities in the Bay Area with our current tax rate. So where do you stand on, how does this math work for you? It's been said that, the cost of a new car, it'll add $450 onto a new car. Well, that's a $50,000 car. I don't know if that 32% that we're having very grave concerns about are going to go out and buy a $50,000 car.
Sure.
Secondly, food is not taxed.
Right.
Housing is not taxed. So sometimes there's arguments out there, and I want you guys to fill in here. Sometimes the argument out there is not looking at the whole picture, it's looking at the small picture. There's also been the statement that the money is wasted in City Hall. It's just thrown down a rat hole, and we don't know where the money goes. Where do you guys stand with all of this commentary? I call it, and people don't like it, but I have to use the word, the noise that circulates. I need to deal with the facts. Where do you guys stand with this?
If I can speak on this, I would like to say just publicly, I've already said it in numerous interviews, but I am for Measure P. I am somebody who's looking to see this city grow. In 2020, we wasted an opportunity for $12 million per year annually to come to the city and help take care of some of the things that we're complaining about. We're constantly complaining about certain things, and we want them. We want them and need them, but guess what? There's always a price to everything that we want. If the church want a new banner outside, they got to pay for it. It's just logistics. We got to make sure we're focusing on the oversight that's in this bill, though, because that is quite the difference from Measure G to Measure P. Measure G they had a independent auditor was the oversight. That was written in the language. But in this Measure P, the community, we will actually, once this is passed, we will actually form a committee that will actually have oversight over these funds. And if you look at the language of the bill or the measure, it says that these funds have to be used in Vallejo. So there is different oversight. I would just encourage everybody to educate themselves on the tax. And at the end of the day, you need to do what's best for you and what you believe is best for the city. And right now, if we're looking to grow this city, we're going to have to push this tax through. And like Ms. Tara already mentioned, we want stuff, we got to pay for it, we got to get it done. But it's just one of the things, and it's a hard one to bite, but we can't waste another 2 years because 2 years have already passed, and we've been sitting stagnant.
Ms. Bowman, you have any comments on this one?
Well, I do have some comments. So going back to the budget statement, do we have enough? Well, the proposed budget right now is $291 million citywide, $130 million in the general fund, and $65 million from the water fund, and the water fund is increased by 1.8. So the budget, as it has been presented by the city manager, it actually is an increase from previous times, and it is supposed to be balanced. Now, regarding Measure P, I started out all gung-ho about it, and you know, I really love I mean, I'm fine with spending my tax money, you know, I'm fine with being charged more tax if that results in better city services, better streets, and I have ideas about our streets. What does concern me is that it goes to the general fund instead of a specific fund. I will support whatever the voters vote for. I will personally make sure that it is spent as it is intended, assuming that I am elected.
Ms. Hall?
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, and Mike too.
The mic.
Having trouble with this mic. Can you hear me now? Okay. I too agree with Measure P. My take on it is that as far as having businesses, you know, coming to Vallejo, allowing businesses to come to Vallejo to help with that tax increase, to contribute with that tax, those tax dollars. That's where I'm looking at, and I've gone to hearing that from different citizens here in Vallejo.
So what would your idea be on attracting those businesses to the community?
Incentives.
What kind of incentives?
Incentives. First and foremost, incentives on allowing them to come in with fewer dollars and accumulating dollars to stack up, if you will.
When you define accumulate or fewer dollars, how does, within the city governance, how does that take place in your imagination, in your design, in your thoughts?
Just like anything else. I mean, if you allow someone, first of all, if you give incentives, people are going to come. Okay, individuals, you know, human nature, we like incentives. Once those incentives are in place, you know, there's guidelines and there's statutes. You know, so if you're going to participate in this, if you're going to indulge in this, this is what we want. You know, each side comes to an agreement. They get paid. We become a community that people want to come to, and you know, the tax dollars are taken care of.
Do you have any idea right now at this stage? And if you don't, just, do you have any idea what kind of incentives would be motivational for a business to relocate or to locate in the city of Vallejo? When we talk about businesses, this becomes an economic development challenge because coffee shops are great, but they don't generate the kind of revenue. Beauty shops, you know, right. Sundries, they don't generate the type of tax revenue that is needed. So what type of incentives are you thinking specifically of?
Mostly in vocational training, because when it comes to vocational training, you have to have the support of other businesses. There's supplies, there's things that are needed in order to obtain these vocational trainings. So that's where the tax dollars can come from, okay? And again, I mean, leasing properties, even perhaps purchasing properties at a low rate. Properties that are already here, you know, and just a little bit of hands-on and making them a little better, you know.
Okay.
Mr.
All right,
Burrow,
let's move on to another. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Can I get in on the economic development? So I think for incentives, a lot of contractors, usually what will happen is if they are able to complete a project on time, they receive a bonus. And so sometimes, you know, you can do things like that to attract someone who's going to come, a larger scale developer. Once I'm your councilwoman here in District 5, I will work on diligently creating a revolving loan fund. And I actually sat on that board for a very short time in the city of Richmond. And what that loan fund will do is actually entice small businesses to relocate from wherever they are to Vallejo. And that loan amount is anywhere from $5,000 to $100,000. And it is at a low cost because it is funded by a community bank such as iBank. And so that is something that we can give people to have as an incentive, because we know a lot of our buildings, they've got some age on them. They're, still looking good, but they may need some tenant improvements and some facades. And so hopefully we can help them with those types of incentives, relaxing the permitting process for small business owners. We know that our permitting process is very tedious, and I know I have a planning commissioner here sitting next to me. Hopefully she's not listening to that piece, but you have to make sure that, we have to make it inviting for people to want to come here. And I think when you are offering an incentive and offering them a reason to come, they'll come.
It's interesting, we talk about business in the $5,000 to $100,000 range for incentives. And perhaps some would be motivated to do that. I mentioned before that the revenue generated by many of those businesses is still going to be small numbers, especially when you look at the tax revenue that's generated from those businesses. What are the incentives that could be offered to larger enterprises, large-scale business? I'm not sure if we're still in an environment where office workers, we're going to fill up a building with 1,000 office workers, because we have remote work experience now that's just taken over everywhere. So what are the incentives for the big developers? What comes to your mind with that? Go ahead, Ms. Hall.
Okay, I'm all for the small businesses coming, because we do need that. But in order for us to thrive, we need organizations. We need the bigger businesses. We need organizations, companies, corporate stuff. And part of an incentive for that would be allowing or offering housing, and to get people to stay, you kind of want them to be vested. You want them to invest in the community also. So maybe offering low interest rates for housing, purchasing homes, keeping them here. And then, of course, like your regular stuff, your medical, retirement, and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, corporations, or organizations, because that's going to bring in the most money. And getting them here is offering them something that's going to have them stay and, keep them to stay.
All right, let's move on to the VPD, Vallejo Police Department. And let's get a series of questions that'll help guide this. What can the council do to ensure our police receive proper training and are adequately compensated for the job? It appears we're in the process of studying and implementing the oversight policing model. How will this benefit our residents? How can we support it in the budget? There's been a challenge to the implementation of what has currently been put on the table, as it will cost us money. Of course it costs us money. That's the nature of the beast. What new creative initiatives would you propose to improve the reputation and interaction between officers and residents, specifically addressing issues for the African American residents of the city? Who's first?
I'll go.
Go for it.
So one of the things, well, first of all, we do have money in the budget for training the officers. The real trick is getting them to stay. A lot of times they go to the academy and then they go elsewhere. So we do have to figure out how to make them stay. One way we can improve relations between our police force and our citizens is, I would like to see our police on street beats, walking the streets. If you know my campaign at all, you know I'm very much about walkability. As a child growing up in San Francisco, we had cops walking, or we would have them on horseback, and we thought the police were really cool people. And we thought, at the time, this was a little before Vietnam. Okay, I gave away my age. All right. but up to then, it was more of a friendly thing, and you knew your neighborhood cop. I personally am feeling a little bit of disconnect with our police. It's getting better in our neighborhood. We now have people that we can call where they've given police that have given their mobile number and said if if there's issues in your neighborhood in District 5 or in Washington Park, which is our neighborhood, then we can contact them personally and discuss the issue. We need to see more of that. I feel like I can trust those police.
You know, it's interesting, you talked about the retention after training. Doesn't that seem to be an issue related to the contract? Because private business, you'd say, hey, I'm going to put you through school, but you're going to give me X number of years. You're not going to walk after I pay for your education. So what exactly can be done in a council position? How can you advocate for creating a retention policy that might be incentivized? And at the end of 5 years, there may be a bonus. There may be whatever it might be. Any ideas?
I would apply any workplace, workplace and policy environment as far as people being involved in the community, being graded, actually held accountable as far as performance evaluations and things such as that nature, so that people can actually feel like they're going to be a part of the police staff for the future instead of just another officer that's on his way out after he's received his training. But if I could just go back and go back to the question as far as VPD, I feel like VPD is doing an outstanding job right now as far as the leadership, as far as Shawnee Williams. Something that he's obviously, putting and sticking into our brain is, accountability and transparency. He's being more open with the community, and those are all great things that I believe is benefiting the city of Vallejo right now. He brags about nobody being killed on his watch at this time, so we gotta celebrate our victories, and it's not about bashing the police or we don't need them, because we all gonna need them when we need them. And the main thing is the Police Oversight Committee, it's doing what the community wants. It's been several years where I've been sitting at city council meetings and you're sitting like you're just talking to people who are not listening to you. So this Police Oversight Committee is being introduced, and I actually, the last special meeting that just happened this past Tuesday was very encouraging discussions, but I still didn't really see anything concrete saying that we're doing this. And yes, the main points that were brought up that day was the cost. Obviously people didn't expect this to be a free volunteer thing, and there are gonna be costs that go along with it, so we really just have to deal with it. And we're asking for this, the community's asking for it, and it's something that's gonna make every citizen a little bit more happy at the moment.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, our current status, I believe that right now we're on record with 27 consecutive months without a police shooting. So it's clear that the policies that are being implemented by the administration and decisions that are being made are working in a very positive manner. Ms. Hall, jump on into this conversation. What is your position? What are your thoughts? How do we retain those personnel after they're trained so that they're not running away?
Again, I'm going to stick with incentives and in policy, contract. If we put you through this, just like you said, if we're putting you through this training, we're offering this to you, this is what you need to give us back. That helps with retaining also. And that's how I see it. Carl? And again, I want to say too that as far as the shootings and so forth and so on, that's a plus. It's an absolute plus.
It is. I agree with you. And I agree with a lot of things everyone has said on the panel. When it comes to retention, I've always been told, I've been in human resources for a number of years now, almost 10 years. And what I hear a lot of managers say, and higher echelon, C-level executives, is that employees often don't quit their job, they quit working for their manager. And that is no truer words have been spoken. I'm an employee, I'm a public servant myself, I work for the city of San Francisco, and when you've had enough, you've had enough. A lot of this is going to boil down to leadership. How are you leading and guiding our officers to, one, be accountable, two, to sharpen their skills, to continuously train them and develop them. You know, officers are, any position that you take, you know, you're in that infancy stage and you have to grow. And as a leader, it is your responsibility to make sure that those employees are continuously growing or they will leave.
I did have to chime in one more time on that, honestly, just a quick thing. As far as the training, you mentioned that I actually reviewed the city budget. As of just last week, I had a meeting with the city manager and the public works director, and I did question the city manager, whereas I did not see any training, line for training as far as in the police department. A lot of people probably not gonna catch that, but I only compared and contrasted to the fire department, which was one line lower, which actually had training there. So I just brought that up to him because, you know, there's a lot of big talk about police oversight and training and things like that, but if it's not in the budget, it's not being paid for.
Yeah, and that is what the Oversight Committee will be engaged in. I'm certain that's one of the areas that they should be engaged in.
To your point, and you're correct, one of the residents who's actually here tonight had brought that up about, you know, having an itemized budget, and she even recommended, you know, having the budget, an oversight committee specifically for the police budget, which I agree with. She wanted it quarterly, I said biannual, because that's manpower, and it's a budget, right? It's cyclic. But I do agree that we should have more itemization, definitely in our budget, especially for police and fire, because those are our two biggest, those are the two biggest funds that we're paying for.
Thank you very much. Let me have you get 2 minutes to give your 2-minute elevator pitch. Go, Ms. Stansbury,
all right.
you're first.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. You know, right now, District 5, we are at a very critical space and time. And what I need you to do is I need us all to band together and support one another. I am, as a commissioner, as a public servant, as a small business owner, as a homeowner here, I have set my roots here in this city, and I'm not going anywhere whether you like it or not. And I'm here to stay. And I am here to support working families. I am here to support our seniors. I am here to support our veterans. I am here to support our teachers. I am here to support everyone here that is in our community. But we can't do it alone, and neither can I. So I want us to stick together. I want us to let go of that divisiveness and work together as a community. We can do a lot of things separately, and we've done that and worked in silos for a very long time now. But it is time, Vallejo, for us to step up and step together. Let's put our differences aside. Let's work together as a community. As your future councilwoman, you will have direct access to me. I am not going to be what you've seen before, and I am not the status quo. You will not agree with everything that I say, as nor will I. But we can always agree to disagree and do it respectfully. And that is what the only expectation I have of my community, is to be able to come to me. I want you to be open and to be honest and to give me constructive accountability and constructive criticism and to hold me accountable when I need to be. And I will do the same for you. And that is how we grow. That is how we prosper. It is time for us to grow. And in order for us to grow, we have got to make change. And in order for you to make change, you have got to check box number 3 on November 8th and vote for Tara Beasley Stansbury for District 5 City Council. Thank you.
Let's move to you, Ms. Hall.
Okay.
I'll come back to you.
Hi. There we go. And I would love to, first of all, I really appreciate being here, and I thank you all for coming out and allowing me here. As I said before, I am a Vallejo native, and I'm deeply rooted here, you know, but I say authentic, rooted, and tenacious. I am also a public servant. I've been a public servant well over 4 decades here in this city. I've seen the cities before way, and I see it now. And I know it's before way is there and asking for us to take it back. Okay? I'm, you know, like I said, I'm very passionate about the city. I'm extremely passionate, And I'm passionate about the people, the community, its unique culture, and I just want to see it come back to what it used to be. And I know that we can do it. And if you vote for me, along with your support, we could make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Bowman?
Yes. Well, one thing I did want to mention was my focus on walkability and safety in our District 5. A lot of people get the impression that because we're the older part of Vallejo, and there's some external factors, but I want you to think about something. Because of our grid neighborhoods, because of the way our homes and businesses are positioned, we actually have more value per acre than the other parts in town, and it is something that we need to take care of, and we can take care of that by making sure that we have good walkability, by calming our traffic. Something I keep hearing over and over again, and I'm in 100% agreement, is we need to claim our streets back. Our public transportation needs to pick up the people from where they are and needs to drop them off where business is. That's where your attracting businesses is going to come from, is we have the people here, we have the workforce, they just need a way to get to work. They need to get to work by walking or biking in a separated bike lane. They need to have wide enough sidewalks that their mobility devices, such as their medical scooters and their wheelchairs, can make it. Safety is the key. I do want to mention my website, Melissa for Vallejo. You spell out the 4, F-O-R, and Melissa's 1 L and 2 S's, .com, and you can read more about my platform there, and I really, really hope to hear from everybody. Thank you.
And Mr. Monroe.
Thank you all for being in attendance tonight. Tonight, I ask you to vote for Dwight Monroe Jr. for Vallejo City Council District 5. When you're talking about a candidate who's really in the community, boots on the ground, picking up trash, undesirable areas of our city, I'm looking to clean them up. I'm looking to create economic development. I was recently appointed on the Economic Vitality Commission, and with that appointment, I look to learn more about the city, on how we're going to improve this city very quickly. You're looking at the future. I'm not going to play any games with anybody. I'm coming up there. I'm going to be working my butt off, and seriously, everything I commit myself to, I'm always giving 100%, and I always want people to feel that they're getting their 100%. They're getting my 100%. So you can always feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, any comments, any discussions you want to have. I'm that guy to reach out to with open arms. Whatever the situation may be, give me a call, because we can definitely talk it out. When it comes to being economic development friendly and looking forward to the future, I'm going to really revitalize this city. I'm talking about refacing this city, different grocery stores, more open spaces, making our community more bike friendly, pedestrian friendly. The best communities that I see throughout throughout California and Northern California, they're the communities with public transportation right next to the big buildings and the skyscrapers and brand new buildings being built, things like that. So we gotta just start looking towards the future, start looking at different ideas, working with case study, and seeking results. And the bottom line for me is, let's push go on these things. Let's stop saying no to everything and look to actually expand this city. Thank you, and I ask for that vote. Thank y'all.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that'll be the conclusion of the District 5 session. We're going to take just a couple of minutes to transition, and we'll move to the final district, number 4. Thank you so very much, you guys.
about what you're hearing. By round of applause, let me hear you guys. As we do more of these forums, what I'm hoping is that more of the city, yes sir, more of the city come out. And what I'm hoping is that you all share your experience so that we can have a bigger crowd. I don't know what it looks like online, but even though you guys are few here, you guys are very lively and very engaged, and that's what's important. These forums are for you to get a real glimpse of who can run your city. And there are going to be a lot of great ideas and a lot of visions that are shared today that may or may not come to fruition. And a lot of it will be because of community engagement or lack thereof. That's why it's important for you all to become the beginning of the fire that has to burn in your cities. If you love the city, then you have to pour some love into it. You have to engage in these types of forums. You have to give of self. Now, what was interesting is I heard a few candidates say, that the money that they work for, that they do it because they love it, not for money, and I appreciate that. But let me just say this. At my chamber, my minimum wage is $20. My minimum wage. Because the people that work in my office do the people's work. They work for you. And so if the people in my office are struggling, they can't do good work for you. I want people that work in my office to make a great living, right? And so when I look at our cities, and our cities get a lot of money, and when I reside in the city of Sacramento and of course in Los Angeles, one thing about Sacramento was that as the CARES money came down, Sacramento got a lot of money. But that's because the elected officials that work in Sacramento, they make a fair, equitable salary for doing the work of a city council member. And Vallejo has enough, Vallejo just has so much potential. We have a waterfront that's beautiful out there. We have to start figuring out new and innovative ways to engage the community with the city. It would be incredible if we created an investment fund with folks in the city where they could invest in the city, make money off the city because of what we build in our city. Affordable housing and creating revenue-generating communities where the communities that you live in generate an income because you own the businesses. It's doable, but it takes real vision and real engagement from the community. You'll know who you are when you stand up to speak and the place is packed. And when you're that, you'll be able to move the city. And that's what your mission should be. Your mission should be to want to move the city and connect the city, not by sections, not by race, not by districts, but ideas that are inclusive of everyone. You do that, you will change your city. This is our final group of candidates. I have to be honest enough to tell you that I wasn't sitting through most of this because I was talking to some of the candidates outside and some of the folk who were here. But I'm so happy. I think this is one of the best uses of time that I've had when it comes to these types of forums in a long time, and I'm really appreciative to the city of Vallejo and to the folk who invited me here. And so without any further ado, I'm going to invite the candidates up and get ready for this last bit of a public service. You want one of us over here?
Let us reconvene if you're in the hall. We are about to get started again. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good evening, gentlemen. This is the District 4 candidates. We are and have changed the format of the traditional forum that you've probably attended before. Typically, a format has been where a question was asked and each of the candidates had the opportunity to listen to the other candidates as they give their answer and then formulate their answer on the basis of the responses that they could visualize in the audience, the way the audience would sit and respond, whether they're smiling, whether they're nodding their head, normal things that a good salesperson knows how to read. And so rather than do that, we've changed the format into a discussion format. We want it to be lively, we want it to be engaging. Certainly, we don't interrupt rudely. We put our hand up or we say, hey, I'd like to make a point here. But we've got a series of topics that we're going to discuss, and we want you guys to jump in. The purpose is to elicit your individual thoughts, not the thoughts of the people that you're sitting with. We need to see how you collaborate and how you discuss, how you bring together the ideas to put together, shall we say, a solid, distilled idea or ideal to move forward so that if you are elected to city council, we know that you can carry the ball as we need it carried as citizens. To get started, we're going to do an introductory, and I'm going to start on my left, stage right, with Mr. Kayanyang. Mr. Kayanyang, will you go ahead? You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Horrell. I'd like to thank the organizers, the Community Democratic Club, African American Alliance, and the NAACP for their hard work for having this forum. I'd like to thank you, the residents, for being here this evening. My name is Rusko Kayanyang. I've been a resident of Vallejo for over 30 years. I've been involved in our community since high school, so half of my life. I started my public service career at Vallejo City Hall as chair of the City Youth Commission and went on to serve and work for council members, African American women council members throughout the Bay Area. And I currently represent Vallejo as the elected Assembly District Delegate to the State Democratic Party. I'm proud of our hometown. Having attended city council meetings for many years, I've seen the residents' issues, our issues, being ignored. If we continue to do business as usual, we risk going back into bankruptcy with worsening streets. With my years of experience in government, listening and working with residents, and speaking up for those without a voice, I will immediately introduce much-needed changes. Fix our streets and make them safer by immediately funding repairs. Empower the Community Police Oversight Commission to focus on crime prevention and hold officials accountable. Streamline our permitting process to support and retain our diverse small businesses. Work with the county and state agencies to help the homeless into much-needed housing and services. And clean up our city by enhancing code enforcement and stop the illegal dumping. I will hold office hours and town hall meetings to listen and work with you, the residents. My name is Rusko Kayanyang. I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Sir, you are next.
Thank you. My name is Christoph Ludwig Platzer. I was born in Huntsville, Alabama, and lived in the Deep South during the Civil Rights Movement. I'm a first-generation American. My parents immigrated from Austria in 1960 when my father took a job at NASA to work on the Saturn V rocket that took Americans to the moon. I'm called a rocket kid. My first language was German. I was 4 years old when the civil rights marchers tried to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, only to be beaten back by state troopers and county sheriffs with tear gas, horses, and billy clubs. My father moved us to Atlanta to work for Lockheed. I went to the governor's mansion with my sister's brownie troop, and the then governor, Lester Maddox, thought riding a bicycle backwards on the driveway was the thing to do. At 7 years old, I did not realize what I was witnessing, no more so than when the public school I went to was desegregated when I was in 2nd grade. Skin color made no difference when we were kids. In 1970, my father took a professorship at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. Growing up, I had opportunity to visit my grandparents in Vienna. There I experienced racism of a different kind. I remember the lack of remorse in a society who lost the cultural contributions of Austrians who were not welcome because they were not Nazis. When my father was 14, the Nazis put him in a foxhole with a Panzerfaust to defend against the advancing British tanks. My grandmother pulled my father out of that foxhole only to bear the resentment of the people of the village for the rest of my family's life. Those childhood memories have shaped me into the person who I am today and the reason why I have lived in Vallejo longer than I have lived anywhere else. And it is from the rich diversity that is Vallejo that we can draw from and make Vallejo better than it already is. Sorry for going.
Time, thank you. And Mr. Shanker.
Thank you, Calvin. Honorable Mayor Robert McConnell, members of the African American Alliance, members of the public. My name is Ravi Shankar. I'm a 19-year resident of the city of Vallejo, taxpayer, homeowner, business owner. And I was born in Bangalore, India, which is the Silicon Valley of India. We had about 1.5 to 2 million people when I left in 1981, and it's grown to about 20 million people now, bustling with all kinds of high-tech and environmental businesses. My mother was Lalita. My father was Chandra Shekharaya, coming from a family of electrical contractors, business owners, and community activists. I had 3 brothers and 3 sisters. I'm a 5 of 7. Had the best of younger, older siblings, uncles and aunts, a lot of good neighbors, great teachers, and mentors. As a project engineer, back in my early electrical engineering days, growing into business development and activist, I have blossomed into owning a small home-based business, accounting, tax, and business services, trying to help minority, women-owned businesses and making them save money, work better, and collaborate with each other. That makes my day. Some of the issues that concerns me as I lived for all these years, the homeless, shelterless folks situation that needs the entire council's united effort until resolved or minimized to the minimum possible. It can't be just changing priorities every year. Illegal dumping, everybody talks about it. We need to fix our potholes in spite of the work that has been done in the past. We need additional housing, selling of many cities' unsold properties, etc. I'm sorry, can you repeat the time part of it?
There was 2 minutes,
Okay.
and the 2-minute period is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, the lights are green, yellow, and red. At the time that your yellow light comes on, you have 1 minute for commentary. Pardon me? 30 seconds, I'm sorry, thank you. Okay, so we're down at 1 minute and a half. And the red, of course, is time is up. Do keep in mind that this is going to be a discussion between the candidates. You're really not presenting to the people in the audience or online. We'd like to see your thought processes We'd like to see your collaboration, the nature of your communication. Are you clear and articulate in your ideas and thoughts? That's what we would like to see, because those are critical things that are necessary of any member of a board, and especially a city council. We're going to talk about a variety of things, but we're going to change it up just a little bit right now. One of the things that we have not discussed with any of the other council candidates has been the youth development programs. In our city, we seem to have a dearth, a lack of youth programs that are both affordable and friendly, kid-friendly. There are volunteers out in the community that are attempting to put together various things. I recently saw a post from Mr. Reason, who is attempting to put together a basketball team of some sort. Little leagues and that sort of thing are not as well attended because the cost of services and whatnot are the cost to be engaged as more than students can, or children or families may be able to afford. I also became aware of something that was very interesting, and it might be something at the state level, and I don't know if any of you would be interested in looking this up and figuring it out, though. We recognize that our youth, when they use the football stadium or other places, those organizations are charged as much as $2,000 or $3,000 a day for the use of that facility. This is a facility that's paid for by the citizens of this community. The children of this community are citizens, and therefore should be paying, in my opinion, only the cost of custodial services, the cleanup, not the use of a facility that their parents have paid for already. So what is your vision for youth program development going forward if you are elected, and how will you advocate for your thought or your position? Mr. Placer?
Are they still doing the John F. Kennedy fitness programs in the schools? You know, that competition for, well, you were on the school board. Do they have that still? John F. Kennedy instituted this fitness program where you would compete.
I don't think that takes place any longer.
It'd be worth reviving, because I had a great time when I was a kid competing in that.
Sure.
So
that's a school-specific related program within school. We're working with city council, and we're working with the assets of the city. And I realize and I recognize that the city and GVRD and the school district are separate entities, but within that, we are responsible as council for the citizens of this community, and the use of facilities is what's at question. So I'd like to pose the question again. What ideas do we have? And first person to jump in is going to take the lead. So let's go.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Harrell. As a former chair of the City of Vallejo Youth Commission, I remember during the bankruptcy years, the youth were complaining they had no venue to give input in their city government. There were no activities. There was nothing to do. There was not even a youth commission at that time. So I worked with a council member then after researching other cities' youth commissions, what they can do to improve involvement as well as activities for youth. That commission got approved in 2010, and I got appointed as the chair after the commission was created. We gave input to the city on, for example, the downtown, the specific plan, where the city wanted to add more alcohol establishments. When our commission recommended to the city, we would like to see more family, arts, and entertainment. And years later, we now have the Second Friday Art Walk. Second, I remember growing up in Vallejo, we had Little League, we had the Omega Boys and Girls Club. Those need to be brought back. And I know how to get things done. In my experience in government, where to find the money to restore those programs.
Okay, and we're talking, this is a discussion between you. Ravi, jump in.
Yes. Two things jump to my mind as soon as I heard of youth and children's programs. First, as an immigrant American, one of the first things I noticed was the lack of mandatory community service before they go into high school graduation, and college, and beyond. To me, since every family doesn't, preach some of the good values in the same way, some spoil them, although they love all their children, I feel that was one of the biggest lacking programs. Second, to me, when I think that we used to have a fairly good working youth commission, and for some reason, whatever, 2 or 3 council administrations ago, they got rid of the youth council. To me, that is certainly not acceptable. That priority should not have been taken down because children and youth continue to be our future. So those are 2 things that jump into my mind. Thank you.
And what, as a council person, what are you capable of doing and advocating for if you were elected to the position? Mr. Kayang, you suggested you know where to find the resources, the funds to make things happen. You've made some specific suggestions. I'd like to know what those ideas are. You guys should be discussing this so that you guys can come to a conclusion. Can you do it? Let's make it happen.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Harrell. I agree with Mr. Shankar about bringing back the Youth Commission. And to take it a step further, I know how to bring it back. Having worked with that council member then, I still remember the process and how to get things on the agenda. So that'll be my first priority when elected, is put it on the agenda to reconstitute the Youth Commission, start outreaching to the high schools, as well as the private schools throughout Vallejo, and even the after-school programs. Also, when the Youth Commission does get reconstituted, they could working with GVRD to bring back Little League. And in terms of the city budget, I've seen lots of items where we could better spend our money on. For those that remember, the city was proposing using federal money, ARPA funds, to buy a $2 million fire alarm system. We could have used that money to reopen Omega Boys and Girls Club, or help pay for Little League to help those parents who could not afford sports. We have the Mare Island Sports Center, which I remember our residents have used in past years. Unfortunately, it's currently closed. That's something I like to work on, working with the property owner to see if we could bring that center open. And there's plenty of fields, especially on Morden Field on Mare Island, which we could use as a potential Mare Island Little League site, in addition to restoring North Vallejo Little League and East Vallejo Little League. Those are my
Vallejo
priorities.
has a south, and Vallejo has
And
a
South-
lot of areas
South
that
Vallejo
need those
Little
youth
League.
to have access. You know, one of the things that I've recognized in other cities, in other groups, and that is where actually they have student council members.
Yep.
So that you have students from the high school actually sitting at the dais. And part of that is to give them the experience and the knowledge to pull them into the political forum, shall we say. And is this something that you would be in favor of or not? Mr. Platzer.
Well, I guess I'm not really used to this format, but I did want to address the earlier question that I didn't have.
We're on this question.
Could you repeat the question?
Student representation on council. What are your thoughts on that?
As a voting member?
That would be up to the council to determine.
Well, I'd have to ask my colleagues how they feel about it. Because I'm for lowering the voting age within the districts to 14.
Okay.
And I think a representative on the council that is younger than 18 is not a bad thing. Now, whether or not they're bestowed with the full weight and authority of the office, that's a different thing, because they'd have to get elected in order for that to happen.
Sure.
So I'd love to see them. I get to talk for another 2 minutes. It's give them a seat at the table. You listen to what they have to say. Let them participate in the conversations. And I don't know, do my colleagues agree with me?
What are your thoughts, gentlemen? This is where the discussion begins. Mr. Shankar.
I would say, considering their general age and life experience, and with all the distraction in the modern day, I would say I would not give them a voting straight away. We take a couple of baby steps and build it all in. Have them represented, have them collaborate and get trained with anything from the chambers of commerce, or GVRD, or the school district. Train them, orient them, and then really empower them.
Okay. Mr. Kayang, you're biting your lips.
Yes.
Come with it.
Well, As someone who has legislative experience, I remember when I served on the school board, one of the pieces of legislation I was able to get through is having a student board member. I researched other school districts throughout the state. They have the policy in place. A student board member gets elected from one of the high schools. They're seated at the school board meetings, and if we had one at the city council, they would be recognized as full members of the legislative body. They would have advisory voting powers so that any vote they would take, any legal issues in the future, they would not be subject to that liability. It's important that we have this initiative in place. I can take the lead on this as I'm familiar with writing up the legislation. I'm happy to do the research and work with residents and fellow community leaders and partners here so that we could have at least one advisory vote using youth member on the city council.
And the reason for the question, gentlemen, is simply that we need to recognize the importance of the youth in the sustainability and the success of our community and our city. They have to have a seat at the table. Is this the format to give them that opportunity? Yes, Mr. Shankar.
I had a comment. I remember Leadership Vallejo, I believe, used to have a mock council member training for the youth at some point. I think that was a good plan to get them oriented and motivated. Thank you.
Very good.
Can I say something?
Yes, certainly.
When I was going to school, we had something called a model UN. And I think you might consider creating something similar to a model UN, but a model council that can be something that young people can participate in and have mock votes on the same issues that are being dealt with by city council.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's move on to the topics that we discussed with the other candidate groups, the first one being taxes. We are at the point that we're having an election, a ballot measure. Measure P is going to be on the ballot. That's for an increase in the sales tax. That sales tax increase is projected to generate approximately $18 million a year. It is one of the only ways that a city of this nature that has no very specific industry can generate $18 million. Here are the questions, and they will be, you should use these to formulate your conversation, your argument, your position. What way can the city increase revenue to support healthy city function? How can we achieve it? Are you in favor of the sales tax increase initiative on the upcoming ballot? Do we have enough revenue currently to pay for projects and things the community need and desire, such as fixing potholes? If there is an excess in expenses, how can the budget be adjusted and still provide the desired needs for the citizens and the community? Mr. Shankar, let's start with you having your comments, and then feel free to jump in, you guys, in this conversation.
Yes, thank you. Very clearly, no new taxes, no more new taxes. The last couple of years of the pandemic, most everybody has suffered economic hardship of one kind or another. To raise families, care for the elderly, keep their jobs, it's been a challenge, you know. Second, I would say tax measures are always not the solution for every problem. And I'm going to apply an immigrant perspective. It's nothing new. It's not rocket science, but a lot of people do that when things are hard. And that is called also look at cutting down expenses, cutting down waste, reducing certain low priority needs and wants, and also look at making that gap filled with the other options.
$18 million worth of expenses, where would be the first place you would cut?
Well,
or $18 million projected additional revenue. We need to make that up through the cuts that you're suggesting. Where would that happen? Anybody jump on in.
Well, yeah, the first, I just want to state that I'm strongly opposed against Measure P to increase our sales tax. Many residents are concerned, from what they have told me, is it'll make Vallejo one of the cities with the highest sales tax in the county. It's going to be hard to shop in Vallejo. You're just going to drive residents out of Vallejo to cities that have lower sales tax. We cannot afford that, especially when we're trying to support and retain diverse businesses, minority-owned businesses in Vallejo. The ways I could identify to cut in our current city budget is pay raises for management. The city budget increase for the police department is up this year versus last year. We need to reallocate the funds from the police department into addressing quality of life issues, like fixing into public works, into other city departments, like code enforcement to address quality of, like finally taking care of the abandoned vehicles on the streets. And we just need to ensure that our money is spent properly. Like any expense that comes before council, like contracts or purchase orders, make sure they're scrutinized and ask, is this the best use of our limited resources for Vallejo? There's plenty of state and federal grants and regional grants out there. As someone who has contacts at the regional and state level of government, I know where to find the money. There's plenty of money out there to fix our streets, which is long overdue. We're in an era of bridge tolls going up, costs going up. We cannot overburden more of our residents at this time.
And Mr. Platzer, you had a comment?
Well, I was just going to suggest what you said isn't entirely accurate, because when you buy a car, you pay the taxes to where you live. So if I buy a car in San Jose, I'm not paying San Jose taxes on that new car purchase. I'm paying Vallejo taxes on that car purchase, even if I'm going and buying it from a dealer. Then I'd also like to mention, and I hope you can agree with this, that one way to grow, it's not so much cutting 18 million, it's to grow it, grow the general fund revenue overall, which you can do by having more people spending more money in Vallejo. And I'll give you an example.
And how do we do that?
Well, I would do it by creating more jobs, and the people that earn the money from those jobs decide to spend that money in Vallejo.
And how do we do that?
Create more jobs?
Yes, sir.
Well, remove the barriers to businesses like EPS. I just had a talk with Victor. He wants to expand his building, his factory, but the city won't let him. He can expand his factory and add 100 people. Or help the dry docks, who I also had a conversation with, who has currently 120 people working at the dry docks, but is looking for 100 more people to work.
And what will the city-generated revenue be as a result of the expansion of those businesses and the increase in personnel at 100 people? Would those people be spending their money within the city of Vallejo that creates the tax base that we need?
Well, you know, sales taxes are a regressive tax. They burden the least wealthy in a society. So I'm not in favor of those just from that standpoint. I would look towards the increase in people shopping and buying and dining in Vallejo. I'm sorry, I kind of lost the thread of the question.
You're on the path. It's just $18 million worth of revenue to be generated through those increases. That's all I'm asking.
That's also, there's no guarantee that that's actually going to be the number, but we were talking about the youth. There are trade programs that you can put young people into in high school so they can graduate high school with a skill. Those skills can then be put to work at the dry docks as a welder, as a pipe fitter, as a painter, just something that doesn't require a college education. There's opportunities there to let young people from Vallejo learn a trade, groom them so that they actually can enter into an apprenticeship program and supply the demand for the jobs that are out there that can't be filled because they don't have the skill sets.
This is how we create jobs in Vallejo. We got to streamline the permitting process. I received countless complaints from residents and diverse business owners that it's so difficult to open up a business and stay here. For example, there was a resident who's a professional psychologist. When she wanted to open up her practice in Vallejo, she went down to City Hall. City Hall gave her conflicting answers, the runaround. and she just gave up and she went to another city. That should not be happening. Second, we need to audit the planning department so that we ensure these processes, these confusions, don't be barriers for any potential new businesses, as well as residents who want to fix up their properties. That's how we could eventually increase our tax base in Vallejo. And I would also advocate, back to the budget, cut the costs in the police department, even cutting their salaries.
How do you do that? I'm just curious. I've heard that phrase used. We have a challenge of, and one of the candidates at the beginning forum, at the beginning group, the first group, indicated that we have a real challenge in the retention of personnel once they go through the training process of the VPD Academy. You know, they'll stay here for a minute and then they're bouncing to another place. The reality is, how do you cut salaries on personnel that are already leaving and you don't have enough anyway? How does the math work on that? Help me understand. Help the community understand.
Yeah. Vallejo is facing $50 million of police misconduct lawsuits. We just cannot afford it. That's what keeps me worried about Vallejo going bankrupt if we don't get our house in order.
You know, it's interesting, but the reality is there's nothing you can do to get in order $50 million of existing liabilities. Those liabilities are going to be there. And we can only hope that through negotiation and otherwise, those liabilities can be reduced so that we don't have the $50 million elephant that's going to sit on our head shortly. So at the end of the day, we can't change that. The behavior existed. The behavior was carried out. That's something to be adjudicated. And there's nothing we can do about that. It should have nothing to do with the budgetary question. It doesn't come out of the budget. So I'm curious as to how you're bringing the two together.
This current contract that the city entered with the Vallejo Police Union, if I was on council right now, I would have voted no, because there's so many problems with that contract, not just paying the officers well. When we have, the last several years, many black and brown residents killed by police, not just in Vallejo, but statewide and nationwide.
Sure.
One of the things that's missing in the police union contract is mandatory drug testing, like other cities have in those contracts. There's a lot of reforms that need to be made the next time the police union contract gets negotiated. There's one of the things I would like to see is, and I've worked on legislation for a council member in another city. Anytime a police officer commits misconduct, they should not be, the city should not pay for administrative leave, especially if they killed or being investigated for killing an unarmed person. And then if we had this police oversight model in place right now, like a strong, real police oversight commission with real powers like investigative powers, and the power to fire police officers right now, we would not be in this current situation we're in. So,
agreed. We're here. We have to move forward from here. That's really, I want to keep coming back to that. We're here. The liability exists. My kid wrecked the car. I got to get it fixed. It don't matter what the reason was. I got to get it fixed. And so what do we have to do? We have to find the money to get the car fixed. That's it. For me, that's where it breaks down. And so I really want to get some clarity on it, on what the candidates for council are thinking regarding this. Go ahead.
I have like 4 or 5 comments to make on it.
Good.
First and foremost, I think the $18 million is a highly exaggerated number. I am no expert in it, but based on what little I know of, whenever it comes to ballot measures, the staff and the consultants appear to pad it all upwards, and they do the other ways when it comes to a participatory budgeting or any of the other projects. So I've seen it too often. Secondly, I was told that it's hard to cut pay, and we have negotiated things in place already. So I was thinking, and I have talked about it twice in city council podiums in the past, and that is to do a 5% moratorium for 2 to 5 years for the highest paid employees of the city, followed by about 3% freeze on their wages and benefits for another 2 to 5 years for the middle management, and about 1%, all of which for the remaining staff. So together, it might contribute to help fill some of the gaps. Third, there is a lot of wasted, unused city property. One of our council members brought it up during the early years of PB, and the city manager and staff never came back with those responses and the accountability, and other things happened, and it got under the table, whatever. I can also think of hiring I would say, majority of the consultants from out of state, out of town, that would have saved some money when there are local experts available of a significant experience and a proven background. So I can think of these 4 or 5. And lastly, as a sister city former commissioner and a current board member, I can think of collaborating with 7 sister cities of ours, especially 5 of them are very prosperous, modern-day economies. It has some international money issues in question that need to be researched, but it can be explored. So I would say this could easily make up the $10, $12 million range. There are other aspects that need to be delved into.
In your projection of the timeline to generate that type of revenue, looking at 10 to 12, and that's fair. I was going to say, let's go with 9 million. Yeah. At the end of the day, that 9 million is going to kick in as soon as that, as that legislation is put in place.
We are looking at the rest of this decade, the 2020s, next 2 terms of the
So we're looking at 2029 or 30 before we actually get to a point.
Correct.
Do you think we as a community can wait another 5, 6 years, 7, 8 years, whatever it is, 8 years to see the type of turnaround that we actually need to see? We need to see incremental steps towards it.
The answer is yes and no, because there are people who will be very restless, and there are people who will wait and be optimistic. People said the same thing about participatory budgeting, and we are now in cycle 8, and there is significant progress have been made, and raising the awareness among the participants and the citizens has always been there. And it's about democracy at the grassroots level for the marginalized people. That's a fundamental key point. You can't put a price tag to it. So I would say in terms of the waiting, if people want good results, better results, they have to go take several baby steps and be optimistic and support a strong, unified council, not like the 4-3 or the 5-2 we've been having for a long time. Thank you.
Very good.
We cannot wait anymore. It's been many years that the community has been asking for a community police oversight commission. Had that commission been in place like 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we would not be in this problem right now. And in terms of attracting businesses, in the past, Vallejo has attracted, for those that remember, the VMT Orsom cement plant and marine terminal, but yet the developer would not build it in another city. Why Vallejo? Vallejo should not be seen as like a project that attracts toxic
I can answer
businesses.
the question for you if you'd like to know why Vallejo. But if you want to re-litigate the Orsom VMT fiasco, I'm not really prepared to go back in history. I want to go into the future. You mentioned something about the permitting process. And you basically threw the building, the head of building division under the bus. Since Tom Arnold has come on board, and I was planning commissioner and was very cognizant of what he did in terms of rehabilitating that department so that it's possible to have one-stop shopping for pulling permits. So it's just not true that it's strenuous getting certain kinds of permits through. The other question you had was, let me say something else. The last time we found ourselves in a situation like this, when the city of Vallejo saw almost every housing asset that came on the market triple in value, so that the house I live in, which I bought for $200,000, I could turn around and sell tomorrow for $900,000. So the guy that buys my house is going to be paying 4, if not 5 times more in property taxes. And that's true with all the other homes that were paying property taxes on maybe $50,000 or $100,000. They're selling for $500,000 to $700,000. The county is swimming in property tax revenue. This happened before in 2006, and the county's response was, we have so much money in our budget, or so much surplus. You know what we're going to do? We're going to give everyone that works for the county a 10% raise because we need to retain the best and the brightest. Well, it didn't make any sense to me at the time, because if they weren't already the best and the brightest, giving them more money doesn't make any sense. The way to cut salaries, you can go back to what they did during bankruptcy. They had furlough days. Furlough days were effectively a 20% cut in a city employee's paycheck because they weren't working, they weren't getting paid. And the other white elephant, or elephant in the room, you talked about the $50 million liability, is the unfunded pension liability. That's going to come crashing down on Vallejo. And the beauty of politics is, if I'm on the council and I'm not there when the crash happens, you can't blame me. I'm not there. But you blame the people sitting on the council who
what's interesting is the blame game that's played.
Didn't make the decisions that got you in that situation.
The blame game of a council member sitting today or next year is not appropriate for the bankruptcy that occurs as a result of the actions that happened a generation ago when contracts were negotiated and those pensions were put in place. So I think we're misplacing the responsibility and just seeing the target in front of us.
But what I'm trying to express is that the CalPERS contribution for city employees used to be 17 cents per dollar of salary. That figure now is closer to 80 cents per dollar of salary. So the cost to cities for city employees to sustain this pension system so that people that are enjoying the pensions now is unsustainable in the long run.
How do you make that change, or the change that's necessary in a city council position?
That won't happen at the council level, and you can't tamper with CalPERS.
So let's deal with what we can, and that is the city council. What can you do? How can you advocate? What changes can be made? If you are elected, what will you recommend and advocate for to change the paradigm?
I think twice in my 10 years, I recall J.D. Miller, our Vallejo's finance guru, bring up such a convincing, simplified, rational approach that the two lines are crossing over again, and we are approaching that point again if we don't renegotiate the entire CalPERS contract for everybody, not just one or two. So that renegotiation helps to minimize the losses or make up the gaps consistently across board as a negotiated practice. And the city council can initiate the process. Whether they will be successful depends on where their heart is together. Thank you.
And Ravi, I agree with you. I would seek out advice from J.D. Miller, because he has been talking about this since I've known J.D., and I've known him quite a long time. He's been warning about this, and it's time for us to actually pay attention to what his advice he has and do what he says. And it's not going to be pretty.
We're in a completely different environment relative to employees. Everybody will tell you right now, the employee is not going, I would believe everybody would tell you, that the employees are not going to take a pay cut when there's other places that will hire them, and they're short-staffed right now. So all of the things that we're putting together here, whether they be furloughs, whether they be reduction in contracts, et cetera, even when we talk about reducing police salaries, how does that pan out when you already can't retain the police officers that you bring in at the salary levels that you have?
Can I try that one?
Please.
So the highest paid city employee right now is Sergeant Herman. And the way he gets to that 390, or I think it's
406,000, I think.
It's because he's working overtime. So oddly, the way to fix that situation is to minimize the amount of work of overtime in that department by hiring more cops. Now, what you're describing is a different paradigm, which is people are taking jobs, similar jobs to what they have in Vallejo, in Fairfield, in Vacaville, because generally speaking, they don't have to work as hard. They're not required to do the work of two people.
Precisely. And so why do you perceive that you will cut the salary of personnel that have hard work to do or are working harder when they can go somewhere else and work less for the same?
I'm not proposing to cut the
Okay,
salaries.
all right.
I'm proposing that you hire more electricians, more public works people, so they stay in Vallejo. Because when it really comes down to it, the rank and file, when you talk to these guys, they're straight up. They're good people. And they've been here. A lot of them I run into, born and raised Vallejo, and they work hard. So I see a little problem with senior management, especially when one of them gets in front of the council and says, I'm overworked and underpaid. And she's making $300,000 with benefits, and everybody's looking around going, damn, I wish I had her problems.
You know, I have a quick response.
Well, years ago, a council member proposed if Vallejo police officers were paid the same as another city like Vacaville, that would create savings instead of like doing a comparison of Vallejo to highly paid, compensated police officers throughout the Bay Area. If we tied those salaries to like Fairfield and Vacaville, what they paid their police officers, yeah, we would have created savings. In terms of the CalPERS issue that was discussed earlier, we got to change some state laws. We got to advocate to the CalPERS boards. These are the policies that has been hamstringing cities for a long time that we need to get control back. Second, we need to work with our state legislators. Thankfully, I know some, like Assemblymember Ash Cara, Alex Lee, Senator Nancy Skinner, and many more that we can approach to get some much-needed state laws changes. We got the state law called the Police Officer Bill of Rights, which is hamstrung cities to implement much-needed, long overdue police reform. It's a huge cost to the state and to the city. That the Police Officer Bill of Rights needs to be repealed immediately.
State-level legislation.
Yeah.
Ravi, I'm going to let you have the last word, and then we're going to go to closing, and we thank you.
A couple of simple thoughts, you know. If this was a private company, they wouldn't be able to get away with it all the time. You know, we've heard in all the private jobs, you do whatever it takes. You are responsible, you're a director, you're the head of the department, you get it done. Do what it takes. Work Saturday, work evenings, come back on Sunday, whatever it takes, because the ultimate bottom line has to be met. Our city staff and managers are public servants. Public servants, you know, service is number one. And it has been so overplayed in their lives, they're feeling entitled, and they seem to get away with it. It's like all of them keep complaining, I want a Tesla, I want a BMW. And I'm like, you can't compare them, you know, your neighbor or your sibling. They have earned it. They have, you know, come to that point so far. So you may have to give them an opportunity to remind them they're here to serve first. Sometimes it calls for sacrifices, and sometimes it's good for the whole city as a community. Thank you.
And Thank you.
And I just want to add to my earlier points. I know how to lobby and help get state legislation passed to help our cities. For example, Dr. Shorty Weber's bill.
I'm going to have to cut you at that. We appreciate that. You'll be able to share that during your 2 minutes. I'm going to start with Mr. Platzer. You have 2 minutes, sir, for your closing statement.
The words I read to you at the beginning of my remarks, I chose those very carefully, and I shared some things about my own personal experience and my family's experience because I thought it was important to this room. So I want you to know that I sincerely am sensitive and aware that racism is alive and well in this country, and it shouldn't be, but that's part of the American experience. I want to serve Vallejo because Vallejo is worth serving, and that's my motivation for running for city council. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. And Mr. Shankar.
Thank you, Calvin. I kind of started with, many years ago, volunteering right from college days and over the immigrant years in Phoenix, Arizona, and over here for 30 plus years. And so volunteer in Vallejo, volunteer for Vallejo was like an initial pitch for me, a motivation for me. After I was widowed, became a widower from losing my wife to a long battle with cancer. So within a year, my good neighbors and many friends in the community embraced me, took me over to share helping and serving others. So from those years, including participatory budgeting, it led me over the years to think, we are the government, you and I. We are the government, you and I. That's the sign in front of Fairfield's county offices. So I got a little bit more confident and realized that if some of us run for office and some of us get elected and get to serve, we become the government. So how come those folks are always changing so fast and becoming less of a public servant and more of a politician? So I go to the second phase of the next 8-10 years. Lastly, I know I can't do it all. Nobody can. It's a collective effort, united effort, and a conscientious effort for the oath of office they take. And if they don't remember that, at least I can remember the old-fashioned serenity prayer. Remember that? God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So if you would choose me this November, I would serve and be a role model and a public servant that you'll all be proud of to move Vallejo forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. And Mr. Ruskell, Mr. Kayang.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. I also want to recognize your co-moderator, Ms. Peggy Cohen-Thompson. I'd like to thank the African American Alliance Community Democratic Club and the NAACP for having this evening, and thank you, the residents, for listening to our ideas and concerns. From my experience as a legislative aide who has worked for strong, smart Black women council members throughout the Bay Area, one of the pieces of legislation that needs to be introduced here in Vallejo, which we have not talked about, is this council item. It's called Declaring Racism as a Public Health Emergency in the city. Cities throughout the country have introduced this, like Cleveland. I know the government processes and know how to get things done, to get legislation like this taken care of and adopted. The job of a legislative aide for a council member is the same as being a council member, listening, helping residents with everyday problems, and writing legislation. I've been doing this for years, and I know how to fight for you. We must absolutely fix our streets and make it safer by immediately funding repairs. We have to empower the community police oversight model, especially the Community Police Oversight Commission, to hold officials accountable and focus on crime prevention, streamline our permitting process, and reduce the fees to support and retain our diverse business owners. Work with the county and state to help our homeless into much-needed housing and services, and clean up our city by stopping the illegal dumping and enhancing code enforcement. I will hold office hours and town hall meetings to listen to you and work with you. I can speak bureaucrat, budgets, legislation, and most importantly, common sense. I am no rubber stamper for city staff, and I cannot be influenced by special interests. My name is Ruskell Kayang. I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
And thank you, candidates. We truly appreciate you.
I want to say thank you to everybody who stayed around. I know it's kind of late. I'm sure we'll be doing this again. If they invite me, I'll come back. And I just want to say that, you know, this is a city council. And so be mindful that the issues that we talk about are city council issues that deal with the city. But you want a city council person that has the wherewithal to see some of the issues that affect your city that are at a higher level and that can actually reach out and connect with the legislature. And the Police Officers' Bill of Rights is one of those issues that we continue to fight for at the wrong level. We have to fight for it at the legislative level. And the Police Officers' Bill of Rights states right there in it that it gives a law enforcement officer due process greater than that of a normal citizen, and it's in place to protect an officer from prosecution or investigation while he's doing his job, whether his job is a criminal act or not in our eyes. So it's important to know that city council people are important. But it's also important to make sure that your city council person knows that your city is important to you first, and then the other issues. So I want to bring Ms. Basin back up to close this night out, and thank you all for having me today.
What a good night. Once again, thank you for attending this forum. We, the African American Alliance, NAACP, and the Community Democratic Club hope that you gained enough information to make an intelligent choice of the person you would like to represent you in your district on the Vallejo City Council. Before we say goodnight, I would like to recognize the team that met each week to make this event happen, as it could not have been done without any one of these individuals. Linda Daniels, NAACP. Jimmy Jackson, President of the NAACP. Calvin Harrell, President of the Community Democratic Club. Loretta Gaddis, Community Leader. Izzy Drumguli, Technical Advisor and Community Leader. Siraj Knight, African American Alliance. Peggy Coyne Thompson, African American Alliance. Foster Hicks, one of our timekeepers, African American Alliance. Albert Casso, timekeeper, African American Alliance. Also, Mr. Steve Smetley, Technical Director and Facilities Manager. Friendship Baptist Church has kept us online all evening. We thank you, Steve. And Reverend Justin Lester and the Friendship Baptist Church for allowing us to have this event here. And last, but most definitely not least, our MC for the evening, Mr. J. King. Thank you so much. If there is nothing else, good night and be safe.
Thank you, everybody.